Okay, it is 7:05 on March 6, 2019, and I'm calling the Board of Health meeting to order. We have 4 variance hearings scheduled this evening, and then a number of other items of business to discuss. But before we get started, I'd like to announce several items to potentially be added as they were not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. So the items are, we have a new septic plan for approval for on Lake Street. We are going to review some budget, a budget advisory that we received for FY20. We'll discuss requests for additional conditions on conditional certificates of compliance. There are 5. So we have an additional well discussion for Farm Road and a building application for Brook Street. So any questions or comments on those? Would we like to have a motion to add those 5 items to the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we have someone for lot 69F on Lake Street.
Okay, I'll present this plan because Beth reviewed it.
Okay.
And she sent an email saying, well, first I'll describe. The plan was originally new septic was originally approved back in March of 2015. 2017 it was renewed, so they can only be valid for 4 years total, so it completely expired as of March 1st. So they submitted entirely new plans, but no changes, because there have been no changes to the regulations. So Beth reviewed it. She did say, please accept this email as notification of my approval of the septic plan file number 1915, map 11, lot 69F, Lake Street, engineer stamp dated February 20th, 2019, and prepared for Mary Ann Panarella. If you have any questions regarding this matter, please feel free to contact me. So she's requesting approval of the new plan. The well's already been drilled, so they didn't need to apply for that again.
Okay.
Do you want to see it? Should I pull it out, or?
Does anyone?
I'd say if it's the same plan that's been looked at twice
Yeah,
and approved with the same regulations.
I'm not going to go against that tide.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any comments you want to make? Okay.
Like, this is great so far.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm just here to cover my bases.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
all right, so do we have a motion to approve the new plans conditional to a pre-construction conference?
So moved. Oops.
Second?
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
It's nice to get an easy one every once in a while.
You're like, 3rd time's the charm.
Yeah.
Let's hope so.
All right,
Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good
Thanks.
night.
okay. Let's see. 41 North Main. Any particular thing that you're here for on the agenda?
There's 2. 191 Southman, 23 curve, but I'm not until it's clear.
Perfect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, all right.
So 41 North Main, maybe?
Is that?
Sure. Is that, okay, 41 North Main. Hold on, where is that on here? Just, okay. Let's see. So, next Thursday, I believe it is, the Select
14th.
Board has invited us to a meeting where they're planning to discuss the town's soil testing and perk testing of Jameson Field to see if it will support septic, or not a standard septic field, but some sort of leaching field. So part of the reason for wanting to do that is that we don't have current data, and it's important to their consideration of a wastewater treatment plant that would use those fields, which has been discussed in connection with 41 North Main and the downtown in general. The agent pulled the files that we had for anything in that field. The Pine Hill Schools system is in the field, but it was built in 1971 approximately. There is some information available, but it's not quite the level of information that we'd have today. Then there was a septic replacement for the fire station when that was redone, and it used some of the land in the near the baseball diamond, and groundwater at that time, I can't remember the exact numbers that were provided, but was somewhere in the 2 to 4 foot depth range. So there's a mound.
That's different than what was described at the select board invitational, right? Wasn't that, there was, it was
Yes.
like 14 feet?
Right, apparently there was some work done on I don't know if it was a dry well or some sort of system that apparently CM&D was going out there to dig. The developer participated in that for the 41 North Main and observed it, but unfortunately,
It
Board of
doesn't
Health
seem
was not
totally
there.
appropriate though, does it?
Well, no.
Yeah.
So,
Because again, I think if you're saying we're trying to assess this for that question, then the health agent should be there, or there should be some conversation about what's there. The fact that the developer was present certainly suggests that this was, hey, let's take a look together. But to me,
right, but
that
not
doesn't
with
seem-
the board. And
Yeah.
they did provide a report to us that was generated from that, but it does sign the CM&D staff person as the Board of Health agent, but you need a soil scientist for
Right.
that. So
Well, and
Not
I'm
the
not
same.
really sure, and
CMD
no
person
groundwater
is the
determination
Board
was
of Health
Right.
agent.
So what I would say is, I would say that they're not the Board of Health agent. And I
Right.
think that as such, I think that's feedback we should probably provide to say that you're not
Yes.
the Board of Health agent, and that actually is power that comes from the state, not the town. And so you can't self-assign, and another board within the town can't assign you as a Board of
And
Health
I
agent.
don't know for sure if the CM&D director is aware that his
I-
name is on the
Right.
form, so.
And I don't
but-
mean to imply that anything untoward was intended, but I think
Right.
for the perceptions of people like abutters or others to say, we want a transparent process, this is not what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, again, I would encourage CMND and any other boards to say, we need to exceed the transparency, and this
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look like that.
Well, also, until it's observed by the board formally,
What was
we
the
can't
intent of that?
accept.
What, I guess, what was the objective of that? I mean, it really boils
I have
down
not
to
had a
that.
chance to speak
Yeah.
directly with the folks involved to find
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
So,
And so I think
that's,
that-
but it means there's information out there that.
General
They dug
observations.
down some X number of feet and did not find water, but we know that that's not the only means
that's
of
not the actual
determining that
criteria.
there's not
Yeah.
a seasonal high
Absolutely,
groundwater,
right.
historical
When did
high
they do
groundwater.
it? Were they at a topographic high? There's a million
And so if the-
questions.
And it's
yeah.
not that far away from the location that was done for the fire station.
It was 2 feet.
That's certainly a very different than
Hmm.
the 10, 11, 14 feet that's been discussed.
And I think we
So-
also just don't see many places in town where, like, I don't think
It's almost unprecedented.
we've got 10 feet of
Basically.
groundwater most of where we are.
Yeah,
So in
not too
terms
many.
of thinking about the parameters of what Board of Health would say, if you want to do this testing on behalf of the town to assess this is independent of us. Like, we're not the approving body, but I think that the guidance we should provide to the town is basically, like, we need to meet or exceed what would be required for a community member or somebody else doing it. So I think it has to be seasonally appropriate. I think it has to have the same parameters and pieces if we want this to be meaningful. And I think they're trying to inform, as a business proposition, does this make sense for the town? And that's fine. But I think for the guidance or suggestion of the Board of Health should be, we'd recommend that you guys meet or exceed the parameters that would be required for somebody else to do soil testing, and not to kind of take
Right.
processes that appear
No,
independent of
and
that.
so I have said that.
And can we
that
have one of
we
our
need to be
agents
involved.
observe?
Yes, and
That
that's
seems the most straightforward.
the intent for next week, or at least that's what I I want to bring to this board to
Yeah.
see if that's what we want
Yeah,
to
no, I think
advocate
that
for.
makes sense.
And the other issue is, there's been,
And I think there should also be notification, like, again, given the amount of interest, that I think, again, like, having that be transparent, this is when the testing will happen, these are the parameters, is something that I know that there's interest of the abutters, and I'd want that to be transparent and ahead of time, so that if there's specific questions that came up, that abutters or other interested parties felt like added value to the conversation. This isn't just saying, I'm doing a perk test for wastewater treatment, it's, we are trying to understand a business proposition as a town, and that's a separate set of questions. We should certainly exceed what would be required for a private person to do it, but that may not be enough still, and we'd want the opportunity for other people to opine on that, and it sounds like the meeting on the 14th would be the place for interested community members to do so.
right.
And that's 7:15?
I don't recall.
seven-
I didn't see a time.
I think 7:15 was the
Yes.
Diane Moore's
Yeah,
email that you
yeah.
forwarded.
And I will
7:15.
try to make it, I'm not positive of my schedule next week, but I will
I'll be able to
certainly-
attend.
Okay, great, because, so
Is
just a
it
couple other.
Is it here?
I believe so.
Presume so,
Yeah,
okay.
usually is. So, just a few other pieces. So there are some other properties that the agent found information for. They abut Jamison Field.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't, well, and with the
Do we have
snow,
any
I can't
testing for
tell.
41 North Main itself?
I don't know.
Because I think that's the other question, is everybody keeps making assertions that, oh, they could build 70 beds here, but I haven't seen any basis for that, and I know that that property's been considered over the years for
Right,
various
so I
projects.
have asked the agent to pull information for the 41 North Main parcel itself,
Yeah,
and for the
Jameson
properties
and
going
abutting.
up Hunting Lane, so not only for the ones that they already own, but for some of the abutters, just so we get a sense of what is going on in that
Right.
general area. But in terms of back by Jamison Field, some of the other properties, because of the snow cover, haven't been able to see, but I have this recollection of walking out to those fields through paths where there's a drop-off. So anyway, in these other properties, the depths were in the 4 to just very slightly over 5 feet to groundwater. So
so that would not be
It's-
Well, it's-
developable with, I mean, that could be a 40B, but it wouldn't be developable under Sherborn regulations.
Well, this is the field,
Yes.
you're talking about. So
Oh, you're
that's
not
not where they're
putting
doing
one
the
up in- okay.
construction. That's where,
Yeah, yeah.
but that's where they're proposing the wastewater treatment plan and the
So that's a
and the
depth.
groundwater discharge.
leaching,
but-
right. And so, yeah, it's still relevant.
So another thing that's come up, and this is important for next week, and again, in terms of, I think, having a certified soil scientist and a Board of Health rep who's done this a lot, and even in times in the past when there's been some disagreement over 59 North Main had some issues of challenging the Board of Health on the evaluation done not only by the Board of Health agent, but also by the engineer hired by the property owner at that time.
Right.
Where they were in agreement on what they were observing, but the property owner was not happy with the numbers, even though the agent and the engineer agreed. So in any case, when it was being evaluated again, we happened to have an additional agent in-house. So that agent basically came up with the same determination as prior, but they kept testing more and more spots. They did a lot of testing, and they eventually found the extra few inches that were needed by moving further back on the property. So it just says that, I mean, if the information is there, it's observable, and it can be observed by the folks who come, and I know that the agent discusses out in the fields.
Right.
They stand in the pits, they look at the soil, they evaluate things together, they
And I think the goal is,
point
like,
things out.
I think everybody is, I don't mean to imply by any of this that people aren't well-intentioned, but I think just given the optics and the importance of having it feel transparent, you know, this is
Yes.
critical.
So there has been a question raised. Some folks are advocating for having an independent evaluator. And I'm not sure why that is. I don't know if there's lack of trust of the Board of Health.
Well, I think,
or something,
I think
and-
that there's just a whole lot of maybe concern and mistrust going on in general. So it could just be getting someone completely uninvolved and disinterested from town politics, town boards, town everything. So I mean, I could understand where that's coming from. I don't know that it's necessary, but
And also, I don't think I would be comfortable not having the Board of Health agent there
Oh,
to
no, no,
observe
no.
anything that's
In-
done.
in
So,
in
now-
addition is one thing, not instead of.
Exclusion.
Yeah, yeah.
And in discussions, I said it's perfectly fine if the developer or others
Wants
want
to
to
have
come
their
and
own.
witness. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
a crowd of 100
Well,
would
we're
be a
not,
little
but-
difficult
but
to
I would-
imagine.
But I would say, like, we're
around
actually not the
pit,
approver
but-
for any of this. Like, I
Right.
think the question is, we aren't the people who are approving a system that's based on this. That's going to the state. I think for the guidance we have to offer is, we would encourage you to do it this way because we think it's the best testing.
Well, that,
CMND, select board, developer, planning board, whomever may choose to do
And
something
they may
different.
want to invite
Right.
the state.
that's
at
not
this stage.
entirely true, though. So we as a board aren't going to be approving it, but we as a town would need to
Yes.
approve it.
Absolutely.
So
And-
it's, we are also part of the town, so we're
Right.
not wearing a board hat necessarily, but.
We as a board have to represent the abutters'
but-
interests, because
but-
they have nobody protecting them. There's no
So they
statute.
absolutely have the state of Massachusetts
have to
protecting their
represent the
interests.
town.
But what I would say is, I
Town's
think we have to be cautious, because if we say, you have to do it our way, they don't have to do it our way. I think
No,
what we
no,
would
no.
say is,
There-
we would encourage you to do this, because we think this is the most robust, and if they choose not to do that, we'd want that to be transparent to people, so they could
Right,
say,
so they can make
this
their
was
own
what was
decision."
recommended, you
Right.
chose to do something different. Why did you choose to do that? Does that impact my willingness as a community member to support this project? And does that feel like what I want? And people can make their own choice.
But I don't even know if we're going to have that information at the time that the town's going to be voting on it, is the
Right.
problem. Like, we're talking a small window of time to make,
when do you-
about the TIF and, on the town.
That's not on, it's not on for April. They were talking about
A special town meeting.
Yeah.
June meeting, but at the last discussion somewhere, they were saying that they didn't think June
Oh,
was.
okay. I thought they
June
were
was
still-
too soon
Oh, I agree.
as well,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
But
Right, so we do
the
have
Board
time.
of Health has a obligation to represent the town in the interests of the abutters. So they have to provide us with the information.
I don't think we mean to say they're not providing with the information. I just think we have to recognize that our position is advisory, not approving.
Right.
And so I think we can say this is what we think you should do. If they don't listen to us, we don't necessarily have recourse. That would not be a great strategy. We're one to want to pursue the project, because I think the perception experience that people would have, I think, would be pretty negative around that. I think for us, we don't want to overreach our position, but I think we should be really clear when we talk to them next week about this is what we'd recommend. And then it's up to them to figure out if they're going to do that or not do that. But I would say I would be sort of concerned about generalizing, if I wouldn't do it for another
Although I'd
project.
say, let's say that they choose to not take our guidance and go ahead with someone else, I would ask that just as they plan to notify the developer of when this testing is
Notify us.
taking place, that they notify the Board of Health
Yeah.
so that we can have the agent.
And also
attend.
the abutters, because the developer has
yeah.
no more right to that property than
Right.
anybody else in our community does. And so I think that if you're again saying, we've got multiple interested parties, we're notifying one of them about testing that we're going to do and not the others, that certainly doesn't set the right tone or tenor either.
I think that's a best practice, but I actually don't know that that's a
I don't think it's
requirement.
required.
Yeah, it's a best practice.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say it's required, but I think just again saying, these are the pieces of advice, and if they say, we're not going to do that, we're not going to do that, we're not going to do that, that's a set of choices they can make, and I don't think we can.
And then the other thing, and I just forgot, so on the form that they had submitted, there was in the space for groundwater adjustment, where if you don't find something in the well, you go to the USGS wells, just as
Right.
lots
As
of
another method,
applicants do
yeah.
all the time. They had put in NA, so they didn't attempt to make the groundwater adjustment at that time, so, but that can be done if, again, the hole is dry, but, and I think that's the current state of news on that.
Was there
unless
anything
anyone
else
has
from the
something-
invitational in terms of other follow-ups, the Valentine's Day meeting? I know that David had provided a summary that we didn't discuss, but that sort of summarized the meeting itself, but are there other pieces in terms of action items or follow-up other than the water testing for us collectively?
There's been some other discussion about the right to access the Price Woodlands property, which is at the end of Morse Street, which is where a test well was sunk in the past. And so folks have been out collecting the documents that address that and whether it's an appropriate use or not, and what kind of easements can be granted on the property for running lines. And so I haven't read through any of that.
And have they defined the wastewater like the water district and the sewage district that is under consideration, or is that?
No, that's not
defined?
resolved yet. And I think part of that is going back to looking at volumes that would be needed by existing folks, who wants to participate, yay, nay. What does this project want for water and wastewater services? So those are all undefined, and that of course affects price of the,
And of this,
cost of the options.
and what was the sort of footprint that they were talking about for the meeting on the 14th? Like the number of beds?
14th.
No, the last 14th, like how many beds was this?
Tough to refer to the
Yeah.
14th.
Yeah. We'll have a second one. But in terms of the sort of memory unit size and the assisted living size,
I
were
thought
those
it was like
comparable?
one,
It was higher.
I thought it was 120.
No, it's 120
120
plus
plus
50, or
Oh, okay.
60 or 70,
I thought
or,
it was 190 total.
Oh, wow, okay.
yeah, it
keeps
had
growing.
assisted living
Yeah.
and then a memory care added that we hadn't discussed before.
Yeah, like 50 or 60, yeah, that sounds right.
So, and all those things really have to be pinned down on.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine being able to define the rest of it if you kind of vary by 10 or 20 units. The sort of iteration is a substantial flow difference.
Well, the 50, I hadn't heard, that addition of the memory care, I think was new, I didn't recall.
It was,
that from before,
yeah.
so.
It hadn't been presented or discussed.
Okay.
Have you had a chance to reach out to the attorney Cheryl Savara, who represents MHB, to see what she thinks about our jurisdiction?
No, I haven't.
Or is that something that you are going to do, or?
I guess at some point, it
Because I
probably
know
would be a
that
good idea to do.
there are several
but-
other towns where big projects that fall into similar categories, which may have a potential to impact drinking water wells. And the problem is, private well water has no statutory protection. That's the problem, right? So it's easy when it's protected by the Drinking Water Act to say, and DEP is regulating it. Not only is there leverage, but there's statutory protection. And
So actually, there are some things in the Code of Massachusetts regulations that when they're talking about discharges from wastewater treatment plants into the ground, that the goal is to protect the current and future potential drinking water, groundwater supplies. So in order to maintain a quality suitable for drinking water. So that is embedded in the regulations as the objective, and we actually have it now in our, brought in a bit in ours. So they're pretty explicit about that. I don't know how that manifests itself in all interpretations of projects, but it's right in some of the 314, CMR 5 maybe, and
Where's that
few others.
place? Yeah, I can't remember if that's,
yeah, we have it in our revised regs, some references to that.
in other words, things like baseline testing of the
Yeah.
water quality prior to the treatment system, and then somebody probably doing annual testing to just confirm there's not
yeah,
an impact.
but in
Yeah,
the,
there are
'cause
monitoring
right now,
wells
there's
that get put
some,
in often.
this is something that is of interest at the state level with MAHB, because there are some other towns, Van, Sherborn, who are having similar situations where the abutters are having to organize to represent their interests.
Okay.
And I was wondering if maybe they might be able to give us some input
But
that would be
what I would say
useful.
is, like, we have total agency over this. Like, this isn't some third party. Like, if there's a wastewater treatment plant there, it's because Sherborn voted to fund it.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I think in some ways it's different than if you say a developer is coming in on their own property. Like,
Yeah.
if Sherborn as a town decided not to fund the wastewater treatment plant, there wouldn't be one. And so, to me, it's less clear about what our sort of statutory piece is, because if the town decided to do it, it would be us saying that we were going against a town meeting. Like, how would you bring that suit?
Well,
No,
but I
no,
think
what
the
I'm
protection
saying-
of the resource, though, is a requirement under the regulations for the
Right.
plants themselves. So
Right.
that's a completely enforceable aspect of this. This is kind of, though, a detail, like, I feel like we have so many steps to
Future
get to
questions.
before
Yeah.
we even get to that I think it's we'll stay mindful of it, but.
Yeah, no, but I'm thinking that to reassure the abutters, when we say, oh, well, we don't have to worry because it's a wastewater treatment plant, and they're thinking, well, how are you going to protect our drinking water? It's not that easy because DEP considers it to be a private property, matter where they have to sue, like the other residents, which is the reason we're addressing those potential
Right. and I
regulation
think
changes. So
that's-
all I'm saying is that it is,
But like, what does that mean when
We
Sherborn
have-
owns a wastewater treatment plant? So what's the recourse there? And is the Board of Health of the town of Sherborn in a position to adjudicate that if Sherborn,
The town has to respond, if we operate the plant, we have the responsibility as the town to ensure
Right.
that we are not negatively impacting the groundwater
right?
resource.
But I think the
And so-
state is who enforces that responsibility, not the town's Board of
Correct.
Health.
It's not us. It's
Like, I wouldn't
that's a
want it to-
state requirement, that goal. So we can help monitor that and, review
I
the
think we
data
can
and
help
stuff.
advise the
Yeah,
town
advise, right.
because
Yeah.
it's in the town's interest
Absolutely.
to not
Right. 'Cause-
cause problems with drinking water,
Yes.
because
Right.
that will not
And will.
benefit the town's
Right.
fiscal situation and all
Right.
the rest, so.
And liability.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
But like my point, Rebecca, is that I think we have more influence through the structures of the fact that this needs to go to the town, to be approved by the town, to be risk managed by the town, than we would in other scenarios, which makes me feel less like we need to count on that and more that this needs to be part of the conversation of what we pursue, or if we pursue.
And to just ensure that the proper planning is done, the information necessary is collected, that it's detailed and evaluated carefully, and maybe we can, I don't know if we need to pick this up again tonight, but we do have a hearing
Yeah,
scheduled, so.
Sounds good.
but I don't know why, I don't think we're disagreeing, I don't understand why.
Yeah,
No, I don't think so.
No, I think everyone
Not
agrees.
So I think everybody's on the same
I just want to
page.
reassure, people who might not be.
okay, so we have a hearing it's a variance hearing for a septic replacement at 23 Curve Street. And are there any abutters? No, okay.
My name is Joe Hastings. I'm from GA Engineering,
Oh, hi.
and I'm representing Freedom County. This one, I have two sets of these plans.
And all the cards, everything has been submitted, so we have everything we need.
Thanks for bringing two plans. Right off the bat, I appreciate it.
So we have, we're doing a septic system upgrade at 23 Curve Street. This is a 2-acre parcel. This is at the Whitney Street end of Curve. And we have 2 failed leaching pits. So we're upgrading it in an area of lawn in the front of the house. We are requesting 2 waivers here. We performed soil testing in this area here, and we have groundwater at 40 inches, which is 3.3 feet. So the first waiver we're asking for is to allow a soil absorption system in an area that has less than 5 feet of naturally occurring material. And then we are requesting a second waiver. We're using an Elgin trench system here, an alternative system, and we're asking for a waiver to go to within 2 feet of seasonal high groundwater. And those are our 2 waivers, and that allows us to fit the septic system into the existing lawn. We're keeping a setback of 145 feet to the existing well. We're able to keep the majority of the trees. There may be some clearing here when we connect the tank to the house, but it lets them basically keep everything the way it is now and provide an adequate system.
And also, I noticed that the the land drops off in this direction. So
Correct.
does that suggest that you're not going to find any better depth to groundwater?
No, that's
Out this
correct.
way? So,
No, and this
okay.
is a nice flat, if you'll notice, it's a nice natural flat area. So it's
Okay.
everything working for it.
And then back here, the well is what
Correct.
causes some issues. And I don't see any arcs from neighboring wells. Are they all
So there's a well over, there's nothing within 200 feet.
200
of
feet.
it.
Yeah.
That's what you explained.
And this is topographically higher.
Correct.
You know, Ellen, did you not recopy the waiver letters? Because I didn't bring mine.
Here's a copy right here. I mean, not a copy, but I can.
I didn't-
Unless I can.
Mine weren't in my packet here.
You're also totally welcome to. Are you good?
I read it before I came.
So,
Sure.
okay.
And just so the board knows, the first variance is the requirement that we have that you cannot place a septic system anywhere within an area that has groundwater within the 5-foot level. So they have enough soil, they just need that waiver. And just as a side note, Joyce, you haven't been here in a while, but when I first started working here, I think you and I both were brand new when this Board of Health was reviewing a septic plan back many years ago. I'll leave it at that. It just brought back memories when I turned to my right and said, oh, Joyce is here.
Isn't Title V though 4 feet?
They are designing,
So I misspoke. I said
That's
naturally
okay.
occurring material, and what I meant to
That's okay.
say was within 5 feet of the ground surface, the natural surface.
and Title V does require that you have 4 feet of naturally occurring
Which we
soil.
have.
and five-
Okay,
And they
right.
do have.
And that's
it,
what,
yes.
We have
because I
that,
noticed you
yes.
weren't asking.
But what I meant was, that it was the
groundwater.
groundwater depth.
Okay.
Yes.
I figured I'd help you out there.
I appreciate it.
So pretty much, it looks like once you rule out spots that are already occupied by structures, and then the well and the protective radius around the well, and then the not very promising land for improved things, there aren't too many spots. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Mark,
that
to
is
put
correct. And this is a very good location as it relates to, one, the location of the system, but also for breakout.
Okay.
And they're taking the advantage of innovative alternative technology by using the Elgin drains, which gives them 2 feet to groundwater versus 5. So that's another benefit to using innovative alternative
Okay,
technology.
and they're pressure dose systems, right?
These are not.
Oh, they're
But
not.
they are
Okay.
trenches. They are set in trench formation. If they weren't, they would have to pressure dose if it was a bed.
Does anyone have any other questions? All right, so we'll go through, we'll vote on each thing, and maybe something will come up. Oh, so there were no butters, but did anyone have a question about anything?
Just here.
Don't you want to learn more about your
So
septic?
do we have a motion to approve a variance to section 8.02?
So moved?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.01?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion?
And again, this waiver is being based on the fact of the Elgin drains being.
Which is the state innovative alternative technology, approved technology, and it permits this kind of adjustment as part of that approval. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we'll close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
They are ready for approval, conditional to both a deed recording for the innovative alternative technology being utilized as well as for our garbage grinder.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the plans subject to receipt of the deed restrictions for garbage grinder and IA?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Are you waiting or is Rob coming later?
No, I'm waiting.
Oh, yeah, you have the last one too?
Yeah, it was just the way they came in.
Okay,
Lucky.
so we have 10 minutes before our next variance hearing. Let's try the conditional certificates of compliance.
Yeah, ironically, over the past week or so, I've received 3 different requests. One, hopefully from previous reviews, they'll be okay with the snow. It's no different from what the Conservation Commission experiences. We can't see the final grading or the final mature vegetation. One came in that's for sale, and the real estate agent noted that they would like to see a conditional certificate based on the final grading being completed once the spring weather arrives, whenever that might be, as well as they're required to put a seepage pit in for the backflow of the well filter. So we usually don't grant more than the typical weather permitting condition of mature growth of vegetation. But in this case, due to the weather and the date, they decided to go in the winter. And I always warn the installers that, you know, you're in the middle of winter, it may turn on you, and it sure did. So that's one case. And the other case was, again, snow cover, not being able to see the grading and so forth. So ironically, they both came in within days of each other. And there's one other one, I'm trying to remember, it was 2 that were being built in the middle of the winter, and for some reason, I wrote it on one of the original agendas, but it's pretty much the same concept, that they weren't able to final grade it. So with that said, they're looking for that condition of having grading not complete. We have issued, like I say, conditions for other matters, but not really for not finalizing the grading.
Right, which is a major portion.
It really is.
I mean, it is
yeah.
significant.
Ellen, go ahead, you might.
I was going to say, I think the only condition you've ever allowed is for the mature
Mature
vegetation.
vegetation, that's correct.
So like that the grass has actually taken hold?
Taken.
Yeah,
Right.
stabilization of
Stabilized,
grades.
so, but that, it achieved the grading it was supposed to have,
The
and then
grading
a
would be in
seepage
place.
pit would be a feature of the system, a component.
They
What has
both-
been done in the past when people
We
have done
didn't
work in the
allow it,
winter?
and they just waited for the spring weather to break.
Okay.
So this is new, that's why I brought it to the board. The other one, actually, same situation as I mentioned. They do have breakout barriers, so that gives me some comfort to
It
it.
seems like we should, like, if we've done it differently in the past, we should just keep doing what we've done in the past, unless there's some new data that says that that precedent is no longer appropriate, right?
So that's reasonable, and I just want to get that confirmation from the board.
Is that what-
They'll be upset to some degree, I'm not going to hide
I
that.
think we just
fact.
have to be
Are all
consistent.
of these properties about to be transfer
Transferred,
ownership?
yeah.
So part of my concern is that the people coming in are going to be assuming that this board has assured them that their system is okay and,
Like a conditional sounds like it's done.
right.
Yeah, they may
So I'm
not
concerned about
understand the
giving the wrong
condition.
message by saying,
Yeah, by putting extra conditions
that
of
was great, but,
exactly of that nature, if they are new to septic systems, they might not know the recourse. If it doesn't get graded, something happens. There could be issues. But
and we want to know how much more grading is needed, whether it's
Correct.
almost done or
They
barely
both-
begun.
So are they allowed to occupy?
well, as
on
they're
a con-
building it,
If we did grant conditional, can they occupy or can they not?
they occupy through the whole construction process. But the point is that they are supposed to at least put the grading over it to prevent any breakout. That's the main reason. They do have breakout barriers, so that may help to some degree, but again, the new owner would be accepting these risks if they're not completed, and then it could get messy if it wasn't done. I don't expect either one would be in that
Yeah.
predicament based on the installers who are doing the work. I know the installers.
But that's right
But I
now,
think
so
but I
once we
think
set
it's
the
also- but
precedent.
Right, like, that's true for this, but if somebody else 6 months from now is an installer that we're less impressed by, and they say, well, you did it for this one,
Yeah,
you
it does
approve my
create
install
a,
permit. Like, unless we're ready to do this globally for all future projects, I think we need to be consistent.
When someone says they're gonna install a septic in the winter, don't we always say you're doing this at your own risk and
Yes,
peril, and
I
you're still held
always-
to, so that was the risk that they
And
took.
they get so difficult because materials are hard to find at this time of year because you have frozen soils.
We just generally don't recommend installing septic
Exactly.
systems in the winter. I mean,
Well, or
that's,
you'd say like, right now, the snow will, like, things will happen. It's just you can't get what you want right now because you chose to sequence it this way. That's an okay choice for you to make, but there's risk in it. I think that for me, it's just a question of, it's important to be consistent with what we've done in the past unless there's something substantially different about these scenarios than what previous boards have considered. And if not, I think we're stuck.
or so unique that
Right.
it could be boxed and not
Right.
considered a precedent. in
And on the brightest side, I would expect in the next 30 days, they should be
Yeah.
able to find materials and the snow will be gone.
It also seems like anything, that there may be some kind of a legal mechanism that the seller and buyer
retain
could
that.
work out
Yeah, without some
to
kind of-
ensure that
yeah.
things get completed.
I would certainly think so.
Versus us certifying it.
Yeah.
as-
Maybe they could work out
Significantly
an escrow, and we
People
don't
do it all
issue the
the time.
certificate,
Yeah.
and they just
Yeah.
have to live with the
And if
situation.
the buyers wanted to get a better understanding of what the issues are, could they call in?
Oh, by all means, we recommend that, and that's what
Okay.
I will recommend to the person that's representing both properties, the real estate agent, that they're more than welcome to call. We can explain the construction's been done, but we're still waiting for the final grading and certification
And it's not
additional
done
work.
yet. Like, it's not done yet, so
Right.
we're not
Yeah.
going to certify it because it's not done
Yeah.
yet.
Right.
Comes down to that.
Yeah.
And
I think that's
you've already
fine.
observed, X, Y, and Z parts have
Yeah, I could
gone
give them an
according
update.
to
sure.
plan and that kind of thing, so, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I agree.
So, do we need a vote for this to authorize Mark to say no?
Yeah, yeah, it would, it's always helpful.
Okay, who would like to phrase that motion?
That the condition remain the way it's been, which is just to only allow stabilization of
Continue,
mature
yeah.
mature vegetation at once weather permits. Because sometimes they just can't get the vegetation to grow, and that's unfortunately happens back in the fall, right through winter.
All right,
So can I still say so moved?
yes. And that makes it an affirmative thing, too, so.
Yeah.
okay.
Second?
Okay, any other
Wait, so
discussion?
Why don't you word it?
No,
No,
wording
it sounded
Okay.
fine.
You did all
He
right.
just said that the only condition is that.
The
motion.
stabilization of vegetation based on weather issues. It's not a visibility issue, it's a weather issue.
You don't even need to keep
Yeah.
going, just keep it simple.
Yes.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
And I couldn't hear. Were you an aye? also?
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't, I want to wait and have it done properly.
Be consistent.
All right, let's see, it's a 2-minute topic.
I think the budget looks okay.
Can I just ask a question before everybody starts the next one?
Sure.
I think I got here a little too late. Mine is number 5, 17 Brook Street. I don't know if I-
Oh, no, we
Not-
haven't
not
done
haven't
that
done it
yet.
Oh, okay, all right.
We finished the hearing early and we wove in and,
All right.
so, but we will take that in our next gap, which we will have very soon, for reasons you'll hear in just a
So I didn't
moment.
get here too late.
So, no,
No.
you're not too late. Okay, so, yes, the budget, we've been asked to keep everything to 2%, we've done that. The only thing we will have a difference in from the prior budget is that we were
clerk.
in process, right, of reclassifying the clerk to an
Yeah.
administrative assistant. The last meeting with the personnel board, they weren't ready to make a decision. The next meeting that was scheduled got canceled. That was last week or whatever
Yeah.
it was, and we haven't heard when it's being rescheduled. I've alerted advisory that that's where we're at, that we aren't intending any changes other than to more appropriately classify our staff person, and that bumps up the pay slightly. So, and they're aware and they've already discuss that, so I don't think we need to do anything else at the moment on that,
Sounds good.
unless we hear back.
Stay positive, Ellen.
Like I'm positive about something, all right. Menthol?
Oh, yeah, menthol. Well, but that's part of our
The whole suite?
regulations,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Oh-de-do.
Well, it's-
Looks like
It's
seven,
close
it
enough.
looks like 7:50 to me.
Well, I could say, have all the green cards come in,
Oh,
and you could
oh,
say no.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can just say that the engineer has requested that the hearing be continued because they did not get all of the green cards. There was an issue with the abutter notification. So as long as there's no abutters, are there any abutters present for 247?
Okay, so I will open the hearing.
Would you mind
and then
saying that
continue.
again? I couldn't hear that.
All the green cards weren't received for abutters, and so the engineer has requested that we continue the hearing so the appropriate abutter notification can happen prior to the hearing.
So we're not doing it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we're opening the hearing
Yeah.
for 247 Washington Street for a septic replacement expansion, but we are going to, hold on. Okay, so no butter,
Not in a butter.
maybe.
No.
Oh, maybe.
Hi, are you in a butter to
I don't
247
think so. I think
Washington
that's further
Street?
north.
You are?
Okay, so we received, I started a half a minute early. Didn't think there was anybody here. So, the engineer has notified us that all of the green cards, which were notification to abutters, did not come back yet, and we're still in process of being delivered somehow. So, they asked that we open the hearing officially, but we're going to continue it to March 20th at 7:50 PM. So, 2 Wednesdays,
tuned.
hence, same time.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Hopefully it won't be as cold.
So,
And you know I'm not going to be here.
Yes.
yes.
I'm sorry.
You'll miss Lisa next time.
Have a good night.
All right, good to see you. Thanks. Okay, so now we can move on to 17 Brook.
So the board knows that Eduardo Rose is here. You're the owner, correct? Eduardo?
Yes.
He's the owner of the property, and he submitted a building application that we discussed. I already spoke with Eduardo on the proposal, and we had these plans separate. That's why I said you need plans, and I realized you have quite a set of plans here. It's related to a proposed cabana. So,
Our favorite.
yeah, we've seen other same situations. Just got duplicates here. Put those up afterwards. They just don't want to stay put. So this is the other way around. So you can see.
Like I missed the two plans. I like the plan. He had the duplicates. He just threw them right on the
Yeah,
floor.
I can bring them
I
back
don't
if
know,
you
are
want.
they duplicates?
Yeah,
It's
they
okay.
are. It's just basically reviewing the pool cabana. It's 30 by 25. And so the proposal is to build a cabana area and a kitchen, as well as a bar area, and refrigerator, sink. Are you having a stove there? I thought you said a stove?
Yes.
A stove, as well as a full bathroom.
This says under counter oven,
Yeah, oven, it's oven still.
and there's a grill.
Yeah, so it's really, as I explained to Eduardo, and I told him if the board has questions, he's welcome to add to it, is that the problem is not what he plans to use it for, but if the house ever sells, it could be an in-law, the way it looks.
Yes.
You know, and that's, I did explain that to him. And I know, I explained the board has seen others of this nature, so they're just getting larger and larger, and unfortunately, very close to allowing for living use and so forth.
Right, it's
So,
a studio,
Yep.
essentially.
And there would be additional work if this is suitable, but right now, it just came in as that, but there would be a need for septic system work as well, a septic plan, a tank, getting
So-
to the system.
So a separate septic to
Yeah, they'd have to
service?
do a separate, they could do one or two things. Cabana, if it's only for the use of the property, people that live there are using no more sewage than they would if they're in the house or at the cabana. But they would have to, here's the, not engineered plan, but a design plan of where the cabana, here's the pool, and here's the cabana. They would have to put in either plumbing into the house, and then get back to the septic out here. Here's the tank, and again, it's not by an engineer, but more by a surveyor. They would have to either plumb it into the house, or if they can do it by gravity, or try to get it over here to this tank, or put another tank in and get it to the leaching field, but the main reason I brought it to the board right now is just to show you the floor design.
So where are they on room counts
Yeah, I
and
was
things
gonna
like
just ask
that?
that.
I don't have any of those plans, so
okay.
I'd have to do that review.
I
I just
think
wanted to
that's-
see if this is going to be considered more than what's presented, which is a pool cabana. Because if it was strictly a pool cabana, it wouldn't be
I think my question is
an
like,
issue
what
with
makes it a
flow.
pool cabana?
Well, is it heated?
Heated, I presume? No, not
It's
heated.
gonna be,
Is it open?
it will be open.
Oh.
Just one.
See, I feel
1.5
better.
1.5 wall.
So like one part of it will be open to like the pool and then the rest?
Yeah, come on up.
Yeah.
Come on, Ron.
So is the
That makes it much
pool's like
easier.
over here? Is
Now,
the pool over here?
here's the cabana and the pool's to the, go ahead.
Let me just,
Here's your cabana, here's your pool, here's your house.
okay, the house right here, the cabana is right here, and there's gonna be just a wall on this end and half wall right here.
For,
But and there'll be a bathroom that obviously
Yeah,
has
the
the door
bathroom,
closed in.
correct,
Okay.
yes. But it's gonna have to be winterized in the winter time, because it's not gonna be.
The bathroom.
Yeah, it's not gonna be, it's not,
Oh, yeah.
it's not gonna be heated.
So this
That's
sounds really
what you
similar to some,
so there are
another
no
person I know, and
windows
it's
or?
definitely.
There's gonna be,
Nails
there's gonna be a window facing this way.
Okay,
I think
Just
if
so we
it's
can
not
have some-
conditioned space and it's not.
okay, but here squirrels can walk through
Yes.
at night and
Yeah.
all that?
Yes.
I think,
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a cabana.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not gonna be, it's not gonna be a,
Four walls,
No,
completely
no,
enclosed
no.
and.
Okay,
Okay, all
Yeah,
right,
that
I feel
makes
better
sense.
about this.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is sounding like a cabana.
Yeah.
And it's, and there's no feasible
Unlike some
pathway
other
for it to be sort of, oh, whoops, I just used this differently. Like, I used it differently. I added walls, I put in heating, I did all of
Yeah.
it. So
You won't be
that's
able to sleep in there on a night like tonight,
yeah,
because it's open to the everything.
yeah.
Right.
and then,
The only thing that's
I
not
think,
open
I
to
think
the
the barn, I
environment
think if you
is,
need a place to sleep, the barn will be better.
And again, the cabana, the only place that will be enclosed then will be the bathroom.
Yes, correct.
And so,
Restaurant.
Like I said, there's gonna be a wall.
In the
on this-
back.
In the back and the side here.
So near where like the stove is gonna
now
go
I'm
that
sitting-
side.
Correct.
So
And
this
it's gonna
is
be a
the-
wall on
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
as
It's a true
on the right hand
cabana.
side. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's open,
Yeah.
like you see in.
Right,
it'll be
Cabanas.
hopefully 3-season.
yeah, maybe.
and so,
But my only caveat is, this sounds pretty reasonable and cabana-like. Just don't come back to us when
And
you're
say, "We
halfway done and say, you know what, I've decided to enclose it, because it really will
No.
completely change everything.
understand.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We have seen cabanas that we're all ready to move into.
Yeah.
So,
That would be a nice cabana.
They exist.
And so for this one, really, the only
Actually, I
question.
think that would be a good place for my mother-in-law if she comes
In the summer.
in the winter.
This is all on YouTube.
She likes
Yeah.
on TV.
That'll like
It's
triple
all
our,
right, she's in Brazil. though.
yeah, it'll triple our view count.
But the other thing is that we brought up the full bathroom, and
I
again,
think-
with
but I
this
think
whole
it's fine,
set-
'cause there's no
with this
room.
whole setup, it's all
There's
together.
no,
Yeah.
because it's the only room in that space. So I think this, I have no concerns about. And
Right.
so it sounds like the only questions to the board will be the details of the
Yeah,
plumbing,
you're
about
gonna
how
have to
that
get
gets from point A to
Details
point
on how
B.
the sewage is gonna get to the septic system.
In the
Okay.
bathroom.
I'm
Right.
gonna need an engineer to do that.
But I think-
I wanted to get through this part first to make sure the board was okay.
But conceptually, we're basically saying, from our standpoint, this doesn't feel like a room. We don't think it's a new septic system or changes to the septic system. Now it's just working out the logistics with the engineer of how do we get the sewage from that toilet to the septic system? And that's a piece that Mark would
Yeah.
kind of
I'll
review and
put
work
that
with
in
you
my
guys
notes.
on.
If this wasn't gonna be approved, that wouldn't matter.
Right.
And now, since the board's okay with the openness of this cabana, the issue will be the sewage and how it's gonna get to the septic system. Your septic system is right here, here's your septic tank.
Yes.
Off the house. So it's a matter if the engineer's gonna have it plumbed into the house and then comes out this pipe, or the engineer's deciding to put
But
it
it's
into
not,
the
it doesn't
septic
require a change to
Would,
this.
would he be able to, is that legal?
Oh, yeah,
to
you could plumb
plumb
that into that septic tank if he has cleanouts, if he has to make angles. Again, or he or she, I have to get that engineer's plan to
Okay.
see what their plan is.
But we're basically saying this, the septic system and how that supports your house, you don't have to change how much sewage it can process, because this doesn't change the room count. You just have to make sure that you get the sewage to that system appropriately.
I saw another plan, this is an engineer, Bruce, so you talk to Bruce and tell him he has to figure out how he's planning to get the sewage to your
Right.
septic tank.
Okay.
and then
Awesome.
Mark can review that with him, and then if it's, just so you know, if at some point in the future you do decide to enclose this, you'll have to come back and talk to us
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, it would be much less.
And we're not going to be as cordial.
Right,
Well, we may be, we
No,
don't know.
I'm teasing.
awesome. Have a great night.
I'll think about that.
This will require a septic alteration plan.
Correct.
Right, with an application and a fee.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Okay, well, with an application and a fee and
Then I go and
plans.
inspect it when they, unless you plumb directly into the house. We'll wait and see what the plumber or your engineer likes to do,
Okay.
wish to do on this.
All right, but the engineer needs to get that plan for you.
Yeah, the engineer, find out what they're planning to do. Is he plumbing into the house? Part of that pipe is the plumbing inspector's purview, and part of it's the Board of Health's purview, review. And then if he wants to go directly into the tank outside, if he can, depending on elevations, that's a possibility.
Okay,
Okay, good.
all right, great. Thank you very much.
The tough part, you're through.
Yeah,
All right, great, thank you very much. guys.
absolutely.
Have a good night.
I didn't even, I just saw
And
these yesterday.
just
I
have
didn't
your
even see that.
engineer also contact Mark with any
Yep.
questions.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, John.
So we have 9 minutes.
Should we do our reg changes?
Let's see.
Thank goodness, well, more than 9 minutes.
I read them. I redlined.
Oh, so we've
Oh,
done
no,
pretty
the
well on update on
property.
personnel board
That's right.
meeting regarding reclassification of Board of Health clerk, so that, okay.
We did that
Another
already.
item off.
How about the 110 Washington room count? I don't want to spend more than 8 minutes on that.
Or do you want to do the additional well? 210?
I don't know, is
No,
that,
no,
is
it's
the 210 additional well? He's not planning to.
he's
Oh,
here.
Oh, you're 210. Oh, okay, oh, good to know, then we will
Perfect, we'll
take
do
that.
210.
And if we're having trouble,
I was hoping
Might
the
have to
engineer would be
continue
here
till
too, but is Paul Saunier planning to be here for you?
No,
no.
he's not.
No, not at all, because of the other
Didn't know.
situation. Well, I'll show the board what he submitted for a plan. It's different.
And if you want to, come up while we're talking about this, that'd be.
He puts, this is the plan first of all. I have a couple of them if you want.
I would like to see. Thanks.
And you're welcome to come up if you'd like to.
Sure. So what Paul did is, if you look at the lower left-hand side, he does address there are no wells or septics within 200 feet of the proposed well except as shown. And then he did a cutout on the upper right side, showing the existing well on the site, and that scale's not shown, but it obviously is
Is this the house? This is
Yeah,
the
this
house?
is the same house here as here.
So it would be, like, it's off the figure?
Yeah, because it's such a large area, he had to condense almost like a locust plan, 1 in 300.
Okay, so
So
here.
you'd have something a little better.
So what, you'll need those
Yeah, I'll
copies
need-
for the.
Okay, thank you. Yep, thank you.
And so what Paul explained to me, and the owner's here too, so
So
he
this
can
is,
explain it.
this is the house. That's the existing well.
And he wants
What's
to
this?
That's a barn.
He wants to retain this for irrigation and put in the
Is
new
this-
well.
Little farm pond? Or-
No, it's like a backwater of farm.
Oh, okay.
Here's the proposed area for the new well right here. So this is the new well near the house.
And where's-
the
how
other
far
well
is-
is down there, Farm Pond.
How far is this from the road? It's hard when not everything's on the same map. It really,
He
you
submits
really
a
need
larger
to.
plan. He didn't
Because this
submit-
looks like it's
Close to the road.
very close to the road.
Do you know if he?
But we
where
may
he's
also just be
proposing it?
misoriented. So I guess this plan is oriented like this.
The road is gonna be right here somewhere.
Yeah, he has to-
Oh, okay, wait a minute.
Oh,
So
sorry.
let me,
No, it's right here somewhere, this way.
'cause he has
so
to-
this is, well, here's north and here's north, yeah, so this is right.
55 feet to, would that be to pavement or to,
Let's see what he wrote here. To paved lane, maybe?
yeah.
PL, whatever that
That would
is.
be about
He
right.
got a
Well,
little.
he's saying, like, also, I'm just trying to figure out, where are these,
Other wells, and that's what I
Well,
was
I think
trying to
it's also
figure out.
just
I was
like-
hoping he'd be here.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
the other well, so
It's
this
hard
is,
to read his plan this time.
yeah.
Which is unusual for him.
Yeah, usually
Well,
shows a whole plan for
No,
wells.
every now and then he comes in with these things that are more like his personal notes, I feel,
Yeah.
and it does get hard, but it looks like
I think he's trying to show
like
an
there's
arc.
a north
is,
arrow.
I mean, that the road is out there is the way it seems
And
to.
he's showing an arc to the, some other wells somewhere, I believe. Is that what those arcs are that he told you?
Yes.
These arcs that show the distances.
Allowable well area, so this
Okay,
is
in any
200 feet
case,
uphill.
So the issue is that you want to put another well closer to the house. Have you chosen a location?
Yeah, right here.
That's,
Yeah, that's right
It's
there.
this.
this.
Oh,
That's what we
okay.
were trying to figure out, like, yeah.
Can we just, because I'm totally lost in terms of, like, I'm sort of like, the house shape looks like this, right?
Right, so here's the north arrow,
Yes.
okay? Here's
And
north and
that's
here's north.
And here's north.
Right, so it's
Okay.
this, these two
And so
are
we're sort
now
of putting it
aligned.
So
here.
this is this, these, yeah.
Except it's
How far-
confusing because this has Farm Road up here and this has Farm Road to the east, so
Well, no,
it's,
but that's a.
that's a cutout, like, so I'm not gonna
And so
ignore that.
How far, so if this is, like, am I allowed to mark on this?
Yeah.
It's
you
right
have to
there.
keep that, right?
It's like
We're saying
here.
that
It's
like
like-
here. Like,
Yeah.
that seems pretty close to 202.
So this is 25 feet. It's within the 25-foot property line that you do.
It's
well.
outside of it, you're saying.
You also have to know how far it is to other wells.
Right, so
Right.
then this is the line that is
Just put a general
200
statement
feet
on there.
and then 150 feet, and we're above.
Well, so you need to be 200 feet from the abutters wells, correct?
And with 75.
And then from
So, and
septics.
this is one in, let me see. Like I said, I wish he was here. I thought he was
Yeah,
going
we're
to be
not going
here
to approve
tonight.
anything based on this because it's not
Yeah.
as,
And why do you want to have another well?
So the existing well is a dug well. It's like an old
25.
fieldstone dug well.
Yeah.
So,
Shallow and, yeah.
yeah.
okay, so, and I gather,
And so this is really a well upgrade where you say, I don't feel like my current well is at the standard that I'd want because this is sort of a historical
And-
well. I'd like a conventional modern bedrock well.
Exactly. Yep.
And is has capacity been an issue for you?
No.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
not really. I think it could better capacity, but we try
Yeah.
to be
You're
smart
not
with
going to
it.
combine the sources, are you?
No.
Okay, 'cause that would be not
so,
really allowed.
is the interest to have, I mean, this is quite, I don't know what the scale is. Oh, here it is.
That scale.
Looks like 600 feet.
Yeah, that's a,
maybe, or something.
oh, yeah, that's,
Doesn't this say one is 30?
600 feet away.
So I think 1 inch is 200 feet.
oh, so let me go.
In any case.
Yeah, he's gonna need to
You
give us
want
to
to use
scale.
it for watering things closer to it versus closer to your house? Is
Right, so
that-
the existing well could service, this could be an irrigation well, and then we'd like to use the new well for the water in the home.
Yeah.
So what are you planning to irrigate? And I'm asking this because right now we don't prohibit more wells, but we're looking at it because it's all.
It's like one of our regulations. If
shared.
you look
yeah,
at the,
water
Yeah.
conservation
We're
side
not
of
planning
things.
to do anything beyond what we're currently doing, which is
Yeah.
just to water the lawn around the house. There's huge fields that we leave wild and don't water. We don't plan to do that.
So is the location of that advantageous to that watering, or you'd be bringing that water over to the lawn area?
In other words, could you use the one you're proposing to do everything you want to do and decommission the old one versus having two wells? That's what we're asking you.
Don't know how to answer that.
yeah, so I think just like for your context,
think
like one
about
of the
that?
regulations we're looking to revise, it's another chunk on this meeting,
Okay.
is like, we're really deeply ambivalent and don't think in most cases 2 active wells for one property are appropriate.
Okay.
I think part of that is each well is a point of entry that has the potential to contaminate groundwater, other pieces, and so it's a question of, like we have a whole decommissioning pathway for when a well is no longer used. And so it's not that we want to make any part of your project not work very well, but that what we're thinking about is each time we penetrate into where we get our water from, that's a possible point of entry. Each time we draw a circle, those circles have the potential to affect homeowners who are around you. And so for us as a board, it's like, feels like not great to have multiple wells serving one property or one residence. And so if your feeling is like, oh, we just figured this would be nice, then we'd say we'd love for you to do something different. If you're like, this is tied into my irrigation system and that need to change this poses substantial cost to us in ways it's not appealing to me as a homeowner, it's helpful for us to know it because it helps us think about it, to kind of understand your context. And so that's kind of why we're talking and thinking about it, is because we feel like in general, 2 wells, 1 residence is a bad idea, which is why we kind of keep asking these
It's
questions.
a shared resource.
And also for the longer term, we feel that
It's easy
that
to
well
forget.
will be forgotten and, again, not maintained. Who knows what will
Right.
happen, and it's that entry point. And so we'd rather have one. I would say the vast majority of people in town are able to water their lawns and what have you, or using
Right.
the well that serves their home. And then if there is the concept of, well, we might need another well because in times of drought, you have to do more watering. Well, times of drought are not the time to be
Yeah.
using more groundwater.
You seem like
People
you're-
need
you-
drinking water.
Right.
I
so-
feel like he gets it.
But so, yeah.
You get
So
our
what I would say is,
point.
I think we've shared the context. I think
Yeah.
at the same time, the reason we're changing the regulations is because existing regulation, which is under which you're asking the question, doesn't prohibit it. So I think we'd say, as a board, we think we should change that regulation. As an applicant, you are not in that future regulation state. You're in the current regulation state where it's allowed. So I think we'd say, we really, really, really think you should do it. But if you're like, I really, really don't want to do it, I don't think we're in a position to say we're not going to approve the well if it's otherwise compliant. Is that fair?
Right. I don't know that we would approve it with this
We
kind of
need more
information
data.
I would
tonight.
ask Paul to show the full.
That was Mark.
Like the full. Sorry, Joe, what'd you put that there for? The full lot.
Right.
And the lot line, so we
Right.
can determine, it's kind of the first time I've seen him submit a plan like this.
And well and septic, just to
Yeah.
know
But I
that
think if
your
there's-
well will be appropriately cited. So,
So I can speak with Paul about it. That's the plan he submitted. It wasn't rushed. That it was recommended that I use him, so I was glad to, and
Yeah.
it seemed great. And, he said it needed to be 25 feet from the property line. It needed to be a certain distance from our neighbor's well, which he looked, and it's 175 line
Is this
here.
your
Yeah.
property line, or is this just the drawing of the square he made for
This
the
is the
plan?
property line,
Oh,
and this
okay.
is that's the square. So, and he said if I, came with this and explained, it's a lot farther than 200 feet from any
Yeah, and that's 1 in
existing well.
200, so that existing well to your house is about, let's see, 1 in
But I think like what's tricky for us is when you see something that's different than
About
usual,
400 feet.
like he's like, no, I promise,
Yeah,
it looks
I-
good.
yeah.
I think you're just like, that's not what the plans usually look like, and God forbid we miss something or something's off. Why did you take
Just
something?
everything on one plan with a scale just makes it a lot easier for us
So I'll show
to
you
check
that.
off a box.
and maintaining the orientation of the different pieces to north helps. I mean,
But again,
obviously we can find our way through it, but
I think the other key distinction here that's different than the last well we considered with grade ambivalence is that to me, this feels more like a septic system upgrade, like if you're replacing
Right,
a
if you have a dug
with
well,
bedrock
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To me, that's a different
Right.
question than the question we were most recently asked.
I think it's a smart move,
Yeah.
smart move for you
right, I
to
think
do
that's
this.
a good
Yes.
idea.
And so I think for us, that's the other piece that takes away some of the ambivalence, is that this isn't just saying, I've got 2 wells of the identical type. You're saying, I'd like to replace my existing well with one that's more contemporarily sort of modern.
That's the motivation.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I have heard some people who like their dug wells if they are at a high point and they have control of the land around it because they feel that
This
then
is, I've
they
controlled my water.
feel, right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they know what's going on and what might be
And you're not gonna have the
entering that well
ledge
versus-
disruption issues and some of the,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, there's pros and cons to everything, but
But-
in general, I think deeper
Although
artesian
if
wells
it
are
is
better.
close to Farm Pond, there is an overburden aquifer in the Farm Pond area, so I'm
Even
not
the-
sure
right.
exactly what point you're at, but you're probably tapping into a broader body of water there underground, so.
So the advantage of
So
a
that
dug
would
well
rule
is
out that
advantageous to you.
you have a lot of
I didn't
control over
understand
But
it.
if you had a dug well that was high up, you're saying, I'm collecting the water from right here. And thus, if I control all the land around it, I know what that water is coming from because I'm the person who owns it and determine what goes into it. In this case, you're in the an aquifer around Farm Pond, which means that
You're in
you
a
have no
drainage
more,
basin,
like,
basically. and-
Stuff comes in there, so the perceived advantage that one might
Yeah,
have.
stuff is flowing
isn't
across at
applicable
some
to you.
rate of speed, so eventually something that happened upgrading of
So your punchline
property
is
will
bedrock
make it
well
to
is
your
still
property.
good,
Yeah,
and this is still a
yes.
good idea. So in terms of next steps, it sounds like the board is supportive and feels like this is compliant. I think the key piece for the question of precedent is that in this case, we're replacing a dug well with a bedrock well. I think we'd continue to encourage thinking about decommissioning it.
And I think since this will have to come back to us again with better documentation.
But I also think,
anyway.
like, timing-wise, you should also know we're reconsidering the question of how many wells properties can have. So I'd encourage you to follow this up with Paul and submit the plan, so that you don't feel like, boy, that really stunk. They asked me to do this one little thing, and then the rules changed before it got done, and now I'm in a new environment. So I would encourage you to get that kind of done and addressed in a timely fashion. And so,
At the same time as encouraging consistency.
Yeah, I mean, although the decommissioning piece would
Altogether.
have nothing to do with the approval process for getting the new well. We just wouldn't want to decommission it until you have the new well up and, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Up,
right.
running, and that it's been tested and meets all the requirements.
And is there a difference to an existing dug well that isn't going down as far versus if you had like a 300-foot well from 20 years ago and you just wanted to move it closer for another reason? In other words, is it less of a risk, I guess, or less of a burden than some other well, just because it's
No, but that's a kind of scenario that we're saying, if you were saying, I want to just replace my 300-foot well, you know, the first question I would ask is, well, why? Like, what's the issue? And if you said, I don't have enough capacity, then I'd say, well, why are you proposing to do the same thing in the same aquifer, you know, 100 feet away? Because I don't think it's going to accomplish anything. So it's not that it's a problem, it's just, you know, what would be the motivation to do that?
And Paul mentioned for like agricultural reasons that sometimes in farms there's existing wells that are allowed to remain, or there is precedent that they've been approved before. And he said, you know, the fact that you have a barn, would you have animals, that it's not something that's in our near future. I don't know if that's something we need to state or we need to.
He's mixing and matching a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, there's
And frankly,
agriculturally
if you had
zoned land.
animals,
Yeah.
you would not want to.
You wouldn't want to dug well,
You
yeah.
don't want to keep animals and manure near
Yeah.
your other wells. So that's a whole other ballgame,
Yeah.
and it is kind of, right, I
But I'd
agree.
say-
It's a little bit mixing the issues, but,
but I think if you came back with these plans displays we'd recommend, and that everything we see on the existing plan is there and is compliant, I think the expectation is, well, not enthusiastic, that would be an approvable set of plans in the existing regulation.
we'll have.
No, I'm enthusiastic
Okay.
about him putting in a new well.
Yes.
I'd be
You want-
also
right.
enthusiastic about you
Even more
decommissioning the old
enthusiastic,
one when
right.
you're done.
Right.
And is there consideration for what it would take to decommission the existing well as far as like a cost or an expense or proximity?
If it's
Right.
Okay.
It's not that bad. I mean, I've decommissioned like my monitoring wells. I don't know how, it really depends on how
well.
deep it is and
Yeah.
how big the borehole is, but it's, you know, it's typically a few $1,000s. It's not like tens of thousands of dollars.
the borehole is?
And how deep it is and.
I've seen it once or twice. I don't. know.
Yay big.
Yeah.
It's not hand dug, right? It was drilled?
It's like a manhole.
Well, maybe it's a hand dug, it might not be that deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds
Might be
like
shallow.
not, Right.
But so, yeah,
It depends. Someone would need to
If it's within like
evaluate.
wetlands or that sort of thing, if it's close enough to.
I think the big goal is to say, you have this hole that potentially reaches potable water, so we'd want to make sure that we haven't created or left a pathway. So if somebody didn't decommission a well, what you worry is, if contaminants now flow, your wellhead degrades, then you now have a straight shot into the bedrock aquifer, which can then propagate and have other contaminants that kind of enter in, which is
Right,
why there's
and
lots
you
of
have piping also right now
Right.
from that well to your house. That's your supply well that you'd also, you're gonna need to reconfigure all your piping and all of that too, so.
perfect.
Nothing simple.
No, all
Right.
right.
But what I'd say is, like, I think we would recommend decommissioning it. I don't want you to be left with the impression that that's a requirement for approval. It would be a strong suggestion of what we think is in your own best interest in terms of how to reduce your risk to yourself and your neighbors, but
I'm just gonna grab this, they're both the same.
perfect.
They are.
I need this one back.
Sure.
And so is there anything for us to vote on?
No, if you, yeah, so revised plans will be
Meeting is
needed.
the 20th of March. The meeting after that is the one we're voting on the regulatory changes, but if your information was in before that, it would be under the existing regs.
And Paul will know who to reach out to about the issues with
The
this
plan, yeah.
All right, thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thanks.
I think we're 10 minutes late for our 8:10.
All right, so,
We're good. No, he was 8:10. Oh, no.
No,
You're right.
he was,
Oh, yeah.
he was
you're
2:10.
So that was the 9-minute.
Yeah.
So we're starting our
Sorry.
8:10 variance hearing. It's 8:20. Are the green cards all in?
Yes, everything's here.
Cards are
Yeah.
in. So this is for a septic replacement at 20 Braddock Ave. Are there any abutters? I think yes. A butter, if you want to come up while he's explaining stuff to us. Okay?
Or you can stay there.
Walking.
Okay. All right, hi.
Hi, Dan McIntyre, representing the homeowners at 20 Bridle Path. They are in the process of making their home ready for sale. They had a septic system looked at. It did not pass the Title V inspection, so we were retained to design a new one. So to orient you, this is Bridle Path down here, and it goes up to Ivy Lane, back to Solomon Street back there. Their existing system, they got a long driveway back to the house. Their existing system is in the backyard. There's a septic tank and a septic system in here. I believe it's the original 1966 system. There's really no details. The well is located pretty much in the center of the yard. When we went out with soil testing with Mark, we dug back near the existing system, and we also dug in the front yard to see if we could make something down there work. Both areas were suitable for a septic system, but we decided the back was a little bit better because the groundwater in the front was much higher.
It always struck me as kind of wet
Yeah.
there.
Does it slope up? Or is it flat?
It goes up.
slope.
Yeah. And then there's a plateau here, and then it starts to go up further. So what we're proposing, because of the perk rate and the high groundwater, we're proposing to put in an integrated system. We're going to go with a fast system and a drip irrigation soil absorption system. That way we can kind of fit it in the area. We are asking for some waivers, mostly the Sherborn waivers. The offset to the property lines, we're only got 11 feet instead of 20. And the big one is, we just got the Title V separation for well, we only got 100 feet, rather than 125 that would be required under the Sherborn regulations. So we went with an alternative system. It also helped keep the mounding down, so we wouldn't have to mound the yard, because there really wasn't enough room to do that.
So, but you said it slopes up from the road, so is the well then down gradient of the
Down gradient.
septic? And you're asking for a 25-foot reduction?
Yes.
Distance, yeah. On this. Oops.
Title V separation, but not the Sherborn separation, which is one of the reasons we went with an alternative system that provides treatment.
I think you said it backwards. You want the Sherborn waiver, but that's not a, what's the Title V distance?
Well, the Title V is 100 feet.
Right,
which we-
yeah, I think you said it
complied
backwards,
with,
so,
yeah.
okay,
You
yep.
meant the
No.
Title V requirement, not the Sherborn requirement. That's requiring,
Yeah.
replacing a Sherborn waiver, not a
Yeah,
Title V
yeah.
waiver.
So it's kind of splitting the difference between Title V and us.
And it's their own well. And it's their own well.
Yeah.
But we did locate the wells of the neighbors. We meet the Sherborn requirements.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, it also looks like this is, it's higher than this corner. Not that this corner buys you much more.
Is it 20
But,
feet or 25?
For the
so I
septic.
guess that's as
Property
far
value.
away from
20
groundwater as you could get on this
Oh,
property.
25 for the wells?
Pretty much, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So,
so,
yeah, this person's well comes right in and takes most of that
Yeah, yeah.
backyard.
yeah. That's, yeah, I missed that, okay.
But you said it meets all the
So it was either there
abutter.
or squished in here to,
Yeah.
oh, but then there's an arc, so
Yeah,
you're
we
right, you
we got
got,
that well over there,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you weren't kidding.
Yeah. I'd rather,
okay.
well, the onsite well is preferable to an abutter
Offset,
well,
yeah, I would
so.
agree. Yeah.
Right?
And it really looks like
So-
everything that was
Yeah.
possible
Yeah.
to be done was done.
See,
in a
you're kind of
thoughtful
perked
way.
up. No, I was saying like,
So, okay, so this is our classic
Sherborn.
existing property, lots of restrictions on placement, and then
But failed
conditions
septic.
even less. It's just the actual spots to put it are reduced to 2 small areas that just about fit the system.
And it's an improvement over what's out there.
Right,
Yeah.
it's a failed
Yeah.
system.
So, okay. So how about if we just go through each one and vote, and if there are any other questions as we're going through, ask if you think of something. And are you here for?
191 South Main?
Okay.
Okay, all right, great. That'll be soon. Okay. So is that okay with you? We're going to go through voting things. If you have a question on anything, wave your hand, so, okay. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 7.2.3, which addresses septic tank design?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, any other, Mark, do you have any comment on
It's
that?
based on the innovative technology that's being used.
Okay, all right. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.01? And this has to do with groundwater offset. And there's 2 issues. One is just what groundwater was found at the property, and the other is that the innovative alternative technology has an accommodation for separation.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have a motion to the companion to the last one, 8.02?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
And do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.03, which addresses soil cover and again has something to do with the particular design of the system as to why it's being requested?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor?
Just it's based on geoflow approval. That's why they're utilizing the approval which allows the 6 to 12.
Okay, great, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to 10.1A, which is regarding the distance to the on-site well, but at least distances to neighbors are being preserved, and this will be encouraging for the owners, hopefully, to be careful about what they put in their septic.
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. We have a motion to grant a variance to 10.2, which is setback from the property line, and things are very constrained here.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then we have 2 local, Title V local upgrade approvals. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to 15.4051H?
So moved?
Second.
And I'll just note that these are similar to what we've already addressed in terms of groundwater offset. All those in favor?
Aye.
And do we have a motion to grant a variance to 15.4051J? And this one is the seal of the tank.
Right, we do have a very high groundwater table there, so we need this waiver to get the tank. We can't change the plumbing in the house, so the tank is where it is. So we specified the requirements of Title V for fluid connections, so the Wi-Fi connections, a heavy H20 tank, so it can be buried in the groundwater.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I'll close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
They are ready for approval, conditional to a deed recording both for the innovative alternative technologies and the garbage grinder waiver.
Would someone like to move that motion?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night. Mark, I just wonder if you just say in your sleep, like garbage grinder restriction, garbage grinder restriction.
Now,
IA
I
technology.
forgot to type up the Title V local upgrade approval, so is it okay if I just sign your name with my initials on it?
Yep,
Okay.
Staying for this one?
perfect. So we've got the 8:30.
So we have an 8:30 variance hearing for a septic replacement at 191 South Main Street, and
All the green cards, yep, we've received everything.
excellent. Hi.
Well, again,
Joyce Hastings from GLM Engineering, and I am representing Cindy Evans. And this is at 191 South Main Street. And we have, here we have a failed cesspool, failed leaching pit at the back of the house. So we have performed soil testing in the backyard. This is the edge of the existing tree line, so we tucked it up as close as we could and have pushed it a little bit further. We're using conventional trenches. We have 8 feet depth to groundwater. We have a perk rate of less than 2 minutes per inch. So we're requesting a waiver. We have our own well, an on-site well here, which was very close to the, we're improving it. We're asking for a waiver to go to 125 feet.
Sounds
with
familiar.
With a perk rate less than 2, it would be plus 25, which would be 150. We're trying to preserve some of the tree edge, and we pushed it back into the edge a little bit. We're using a PVC barrier to try and limit grading and activity along the edges. And this waiver, we're upgrading the system and increasing the separation between what's there now.
So is this
existing well looks like
where
it's
it
like
was?
80
So
feet,
yes, where you see it right
75
there.
feet.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's.
Oh my, yeah.
A
Considerable.
whole lot better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And was that,
And you
just
guys are
a
welcome to come up
cesspool in
if you're
the
so
past
inclined.
Or something, or
You're good.
was it just a cesspool in the past?
I think it's a leaching pit.
Oh,
Same,
okay.
similar.
Yeah, okay, so
Yeah.
that's a big improvement.
Big improvement,
Both
yeah.
distance and in the design of the system, so,
Both good.
yeah.
Sounds
The
good.
soil there is permeable, so
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's nice
obviously.
to see
Like-
that.
Yeah.
Great
But we also
assistance
have
of groundwater in all of Sherborn.
But we do also have a good separation to groundwater, so.
Yeah, it's nice.
We almost never hear the term 8 feet,
Yeah.
so it's good. Okay,
And the well is upgradient.
Yes, sorry.
and are you the owners or butters, or, okay, so, okay, but nobody, I don't think anybody else is in a butter, so, I don't have any other questions.
No, this is an
Anybody?
easy one.
Sounds good.
All right, do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 10.1?
So moved?
Second?
Any other discussion? Mark, you're all set?
All set?
Okay.
It's an improvement.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wow, okay. So, I'll close the hearing. Are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, they are. Conditional to
Garbage grinder.
the garbage grinder waiver. Deed recording, rather, deed recording.
Okay.
We should just make like a recording. Garbage grinder, whatever. Yeah, just press a button.
Garbage Grinder Society of America has you on their hit list, Mark. Sounds good. Have a great night. Oh, wait.
Would you like to vote?
Oh,
I thought we
you don't want to
did.
have a great night either way.
Wait, oh,
We could move
Oh,
in
so we have to
second.
close the hearing.
Okay.
So moved?
second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect.
Okay, now,
Now you go.
Have a good night.
Get off easy tonight.
No, he's somewhere else.
Natick, yeah, we still need Natick.
so,
Here.
do you have another issue?
Dan, he does.
Besides the McIntyre amendment to our regulations?
110 Washington.
110.
Oh, the room
It's
count.
the H20 thing.
Okay.
I
The
feel
room
a
count, the
headache
room
coming
count
on.
never is easy.
Doesn't it just give you a headache, like right off
It's
the
under my
bat?
agenda, but I'm
Just-
so glad you're here. You may want to present to
I
the
did
board.
look at it before the meeting, and I went, I can't.
He's going to be presenting,
It should be so simple. It's never, ever
When
is.
it's like very
farmhouses.
metaphysical. When is a room a room?
yeah, 7 feet, it's got to be 7 feet
Yeah.
in height,
Yeah.
so that attic, but Dan's going to
Yeah,
show you
doesn't
that, and
count.
he's going to show you a very large room on the first floor, and There's a small bedroom on the second floor that's only allowed for one person. So it's a unique situation.
Attach the assessor's card to this as well.
Oh,
And was this-
I had provided them to them.
Was that for the
already.
1999 one, or no?
Oh, that, yeah.
I had given you all these. Oh,
Something you
yeah.
gave us was from like
He's got color photos of what
1999.
he's given us. This is the good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, I don't, do you have another one of those?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'd like to see them.
Yeah, so I'll
How many
need,
do you have, Dan?
yeah, I'll need this.
Is there a plan attached to the back of that?
Dan and I have gone over it, so there's no finished basement rooms, presumably.
No, basement.
So,
Not yet.
so there's, as I said, there's a variety of rooms, and I'll let Dan, if you don't mind, present.
So this was, it was a very large family that lived here, and they used actually 8 bedrooms.
Wow.
So the two things that concern, the downstairs is pretty obvious. You got the kitchen, dining room, den, and living room. The upstairs, the third floor upstairs, I think is fairly obvious. It's kind of choppy because it's all dormered and we don't have a flat ceiling everywhere. And,
So that's the,
so when you walk in, you've got this high part here and then it slopes right down.
And that's on the third floor.
And that high part, I measured to be 6.9 feet.
so even at the
Even at the
high,
peak, it's
highest.
still not a habitable room.
But there's so much crud in there, I mean, if they swept the floor, they might get the extra.
But what I'd say is, I think the argument we're sort of saying, well, these may have been used as rooms, per the Sherborn regs, are not habitable rooms.
Right.
They certainly used them as bedrooms when the kids were growing up.
Right.
But
Until they were like 6 feet, it was
Yeah.
fine, but once they crossed 6
For a
feet.
3
then
or
it got
4-year-old,
crazy.
that's fine.
so,
But I
so
think,
it's the second floor that concerns me because when you count it up, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rooms.
Because of that hall office room. Yeah, 1, 2,
And
3.
it's large enough by square footage.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
got the height, obviously.
It's used as a hallway now because you can see there's a door to that bedroom and then a door to the
yeah,
back stairs. But if that door was blocked off, which anecdotally it was at one point because this kind of was the maid's quarter here where they came up the back stairs
Oh.
and used 3 bedrooms and a bath. So if that door was blocked off, then that would definitely be a room.
Almost
rather
like a
than
little
hallway.
suite.
which one?
The one that says hall office.
Okay, perfect.
Is the way it's set up now.
Is that-
So under the Sherborn regs, every room above the first floor is a bedroom, so I don't know
Yeah.
if this is 7 bedrooms or what.
And if it was a housing code regulation, you'd need 120, and building code, I believe, too, 120 square feet for a 2-person bedroom. So when you look at the hall office, if that's a bedroom, it's going to be for 1 person and exactly...
And then you also have the 8 by 12 bedroom.
Yeah, and exactly across from the other way is the 8 by 12, so...
Says 70
If you were to count those 2 as 1 bedroom, then you would be reducing 2 into 1. But again, Dan did bring up our code says any room above the first floor. So it's a matter of discussion on our regulation, state code regulations, building code.
So what's their
Title
septic?
5 is 70 square feet.
Yeah.
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 Right.
I
So
would
what-
say for a septic system, I'd be inclined to go with the Title V versus,
Yeah. They
and I
base
think
it
that's
on,
been applied
yeah.
in the past in town, the 70.
So that would still be 7 bedrooms with Title V.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it's 7. So,
But when you look at the assessors, they've got it as 5.
but I'm confused about when the timing.
So,
The assessors haven't been great in terms of
they've
matching
seen
up,
it.
I have to say. Like, we've seen that many times at the assessors. And
I
also,
think we
like,
have to
at
go
that
by-
point in time, when they did the assessment, things could be different than they are now. Like, do you know how current this is? Is this,
I really don't.
because the one Ellen that you provided, I thought there was something from like 1999.
Well, there,
I don't have it
we
with
have
me.
I provided all the assessor's records.
What's the
So
most recent date?
1986, 2000, and then 1974.
And then there's
As
the
well
red,
as the
the
current.
red text.
Yeah, that's the 2000,
And so they've counted it consistently.
right.
But I guess what they say in 86 is 5 bedrooms or more. And unless they're sick, or code 06. So that's saying it's at least 5 bedrooms in the 86 one.
So if you strictly went by room count, you would have either, in this case, if you're using the 70 square feet, you'd have 11 rooms, if you're looking at Title V. If you're looking at housing codes and they were to rent this, they'd have to have more than 70 square feet, but we're looking strictly at Title V, so your room count would be 11, 7 on the second, 4 on the first. But you have a very large living room that Dan and I were discussing. Dan said that possibly could be 2 rooms, so
What
you're
buys
poss-
this house?
He's gonna do a bunch of work.
Building permits, basically.
And you just,
so it's on how you look at it, really, is the
So
assessor chart is 5.
What's the septic situation now?
I think it's there's no design flow for it. So
Yeah,
this is-
there's no plans, it's a septic tank to a leach pit to an overflow leach pit.
So it's gonna need to be upgraded anyway.
Right, and it's in the groundwater table.
Yeah, so the question is, would we ask for them to have a 7-bedroom septic, or?
But also, it's hard to imagine that somebody, like,
They're
if
probably
you're
gonna
buying
wanna
this house,
condense
you're not gonna
these.
say like, I would like a 96 square foot room as one of the rooms that I keep.
Right, I
if
mean-
I'm doing a gut renovation.
I can't believe that they would want that, yeah.
I just wouldn't want the future buyer to come and pull a building permit.
And say, I can't
come
do
to
any
you and
work.
they say, it's denied, or you gotta tear down walls or something.
Right now, if it's either 10 or 11 per
Right.
Title V, it's a 5-bedroom, and it meets up with the assessors.
But I think for us, we'd say we've got 7 bedrooms on the second floor.
Yeah,
Our code
Right.
would say that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a question of, all of these have been used as bedrooms. I'm okay not counting the stuff in the attic that's less than 7 feet, because it's not habitable space, and we've been consistent with that. But for this, we've got 7 rooms that are being, or at least 6 rooms that are being used as bedrooms, possibly 7. And it's tough to argue that they're not, given that was their historical pattern of use. And
And you only get 1-bedroom upgrade, so the idea is if they wanted to keep all 7 bedrooms,
I don't see a way where you could
they
keep this.
couldn't get any variances.
unless they just really reconfigure which, I mean, this is really choppy. It's like, there's so many tiny
But I guess
choppy rooms.
Like, let's say this is this choppy and looked like this since 1821, right? So then it's a question of what's the pattern of use when the system, like when we sort of say what we can do, we either have a design flow, which we then use to calculate, but if we don't, then it's what was the septic system? And I think the question is, if this is the room count, and we're saying we count this as a 7-bedroom, then what's the basis for it being a 5-bedroom septic system? Are we-
I
Right.
get that.
Like the historical
Yeah.
septic system, when we say, what are we starting from +1? Would we be saying that the assessor's record said 5, so we're saying it's a 5 and you could get to 6? Or as I look at that, I'd say, if you were coming with a new plan, I would count that as at least 6 bedrooms all day long. And if that's how I'd count what it has been, what's the basis for when they build the system to say, no, it was 5? Because this is what the floor plan was.
Yeah, I mean, the 6, that hall office, I mean, yeah, I mean, I could kind of go either way on that.
So we sort of say.
That would be 6, but that would still be 6.
No, we've got like we've got bedroom 1, bedroom 2, and then we've got the 4-bedroom like quad there. So I think you've got 6 there. The
Yeah,
whole
I think you
office would
have
be
6.
7. Yeah.
No matter what, like that's
Right, right.
like, I don't see any way around that.
Yeah, just because it's labeled hall office, to me, doesn't make it any less of a room than,
But it has
Almost the
2,
same size as the bedroom.
right,
Yeah.
but it has 2 openings right now,
And so they
right?
could,
It does.
and
Yeah.
so they could add. So they have 6 now. Like I think we'd say let's call it a 6, and somebody wanted to renovate. I think the renovation would be most likely consolidating rooms or flow. they could go from the current 11 room count, depending on how we do the living room, to 13 rooms and still be a 6-bedroom system.
So going back to Bullard,
Yeah.
part of it was looking at, what it had been called historically, which was an X-bedroom home,
But I
right?
think it was also not, like, I think that was a piece of it, but I think in that one, it was, we were sort of considering it after the prior consideration. Like, we'd sort of said, we're like 2 steps down the line from this, where we sort of said, we called it this system when the board counted it. We're now asked to reconsider that count. We're trying to think of what are all the ways to reconsider that count. Here's an assessor's record. If that record had listed a higher number, then I think we would have reconsidered the count from a prior board. I think in this case, we're saying, here's the pattern of use. If all of these were not, I mean, I guess what I'm struggling with is, what I felt like we're doing for Bullard is going back to look at the thinking of a prior board to say, did that board have complete information and apply it consistently?
Right, this
is
hasn't
multiple
gone.
data. I think
yeah.
for me,
Right, but
this
the
is,
method applied to it previously had been to use the assessors.
but I don't think the
Is
prior,
that
I don't think the prior board had,
correct
I don't think, but I don't think the.
All right,
no,
maybe
no.
I should not have
that's what we
brought
came
up
back
that,
to.
but yeah, that's.
Yeah, but that was our last one, but when you done it before that, it was a room count consideration.
So Sean, did you want to talk to us at some point?
I can. I was just trying to get away from that.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
You
so
want
we're
us
just
to
like a
find out we're done with this?
I'll stick around if you want.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Well, yeah, okay. You don't have to stay right in here. We
Yeah,
can
I'm stuck in the
update you.
building anyway.
But
That
so,
was just going on and on.
but so for me, I think
is
the
it-
question is,
Finance.
I think that like when we looked at how the room count for Bullard Street was arrived at, all of the prior considerations of the prior boards was, we're gonna look at the room count, which is the exercise we're doing now. And that was arrived at for Bullard. I think the question was then, there were different patterns of historical use. Does that provide new information that leads the board to reconsider its room count strategy?
And
Had the room count
renovations.
been different, then I think we would have said, now we need to think about that as a historical use question. I think in this case, we're applying the same first pass pattern that happened in Bullard. If these people decided to finish another room or do something different, and they're like, this had previously been labeled an 8-bedroom house in the assessors, that would be a basis to assert, no, it's an 8-bedroom house, even if you don't count them that way, those attic rooms were rooms. But that, to me, that's what's different about Bullard, is we're just applying the same thing that previous boards did to Bullard. We're not being asked to reconsider those prior decisions, which could really only be done on the basis of the assessor's records or historical patterns of use. That's how I think.
Yeah, it is
I
tricky.
think we should use the principles that we use to determine the bedroom and not use the assessor. Assessor is not relevant for us.
So we had another, just to make this more complex, so I think this would be different than how Bullard was arrived at. We had another one in town that was originally a 4-room, 2-bedroom bungalow that got added onto over
This
the
is
years
like the
without
one on South
any,
Main, right?
you know, so it had a pattern of use of growing over time and being used, but its starting point when the septic was built was that designated as 2-bedroom, and so we used that.
But had they they upgraded their system, like that was a condition where they said, we want to add more rooms to this without upgrading the system. I think what we're saying
Yeah.
is, if you came to us with a variance to say, we'd like to go to 6+1, but have high groundwater, can that be a built system? That's different to me than, can we add a 10th room onto a 2-bedroom system that was built in the 40s?
Right.
This is a separate question, because in this case, we're saying, we would have a system that was compliant, that had design flows. It's just how big a system could be put in for that pattern of use. Is that a 5+1? Is it a 6+1? Is it a 7+1 in terms of the system? I think it's different because we'd be expecting that a compliant system would be built to match the room count that was planned for the structure, as opposed to, I don't need to change the system because I've just added to the house over and over again.
And
But
it's
I
the
promise
same,
it's good.
same number of people living.
Because I think here we'd have an engineered system that says, if this was a six bedroom that they put in for a 7th or a 6-bedroom, and you said, we're in groundwater, we need to use IA or whatever, that would then,
Okay, so I want to ask the agent and the administrator, you know, what has been the prevalent approach in the past? Or it really is depending on the mix of factors for the individual property.
And in the past, we have looked at size of the room, and we've looked at the variable there's different codes. Title V does say 70, but as I said, if they were renting this, you'd have to have 120 square feet for a two-person bedroom, which Title V says each bedroom can have up to 2 people. So that would be one consideration. And the other one would be based on the expectation of the owner. Are they trying to reduce this to get a smaller system? And will they come in and provide that discussion to go with less bedrooms than what's shown? And if that's the case, how can that be arranged by maybe taking down a wall or so? But I'm not for sure what the applicant's wish is either. But we have discussed that once we know what the applicant wishes to have.
Do we have a sense of?
We do. If the assessor's card said 6 bedrooms, I probably wouldn't come here. They're happy with 6 bedrooms.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure whether I designed for 5 plus 1 or just designed for 6. And then if the future homeowner wants to do something different, he can come in and ask for the
Right.
first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what I'd prefer. You can guess.
Which is what?
I'd rather it be designed for 6 and then, you
Or
know.
you could say, design it, like, I think, design it for what you want to design it for.
Well,
We'd want to design for 6.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
think designing
I
it for
think-
6 would be reasonable.
yeah.
If you had 6, you could go to 13 rooms, and it sounds like our room count right now is 11, because we're not counting the 3rd floor because of the ceiling height issues. Yep.
Yeah, and that hallway office.
Except I'm seeing that as a bedroom, because when we've had 2 rooms connected, if you could only get to the back room by walking through the other, then we've treated it as a suite. But given that there's an alternate entrance
You could just close off that
here,
doorway.
right.
So then I think you say, fine, then it's
So
a,
then, to me, it's 7. But again, it's hard to believe that if someone's gonna come in, it looks like a magnificent house.
Yeah.
And do renovations.
Yeah, why they would
Keep it
keep these
96
teeny,
square foot.
teeny, teeny.
So I don't, it would seem easier for everybody in long-term if they, I know that, right, for transferring it, there are mechanisms
But
that
they
can be
could-
set up again that negotiates some set aside of money to be able to do it, and it almost seems like that would be in the interest of the future owner to be able to shape what they want.
or they could
there.
design it for 6 plus 1.
I could understand that they might want to be able to say it's all ready to go for whatever you want to do.
Nothing about that looks all ready
But-
to go.
No, it's not. It's the work.
Yeah.
I could, there's enough room for 7-bedroom system. I could
Yeah.
easily design that.
Yeah.
The issue with the 6 plus 1 comes into, I have to be a strictly Title V compliant system to do that. And the one thing that messes that up is I need a reserve system.
Yeah.
And when I put the reserve system in, it bumps the system within closer to the well. So
Yeah.
I don't meet the 125.
Yeah.
If I did a 7-bedroom without the reserve, I could meet the 125 for one
Oh.
set.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Be good. So if we call it 7 bedrooms, then
So is that
I
better?
ask for the waiver on the reserve system, Title V. I wouldn't have to worry about it. Still works.
I think we should define it using the codes and just be
Well, so-
straightforward
right.
and not play games and.
But I don't think we're playing games. Like, I
No,
think
no,
it's a
I don't
question of,
either.
like,
Yeah.
if somebody came to us
Yeah.
and said, I'm starting at 7 bedrooms.
There's
and I
not one
wanna-"
answer.
Right, like, I think it's a question of
I'd like to
how do we be
know
consistent and what's the safest? And it's a
2016
question of, do we think it's better for him to
And
build
what
a
did they- I
have
7-bedroom
no
system that requires a
idea.
variance that
There's
is
one
not
more
required for a 6-bedroom
closets,
system?
or
If
season.
you're saying, to be consistent with how the board's counted it, you would count 7 rooms above the 2nd floor, or above the 1st floor.
Yeah.
And so room count, we're at 11, or 12 with, if, no, that's counted in
7,
the 7.
8, 9,
But
10,
you're,
11.
you said at the 11 room count, you could still add 2 rooms. People would probably consolidate it, so I think it's a question of, you could build the 6-bedroom system and say, anybody who's coming with a building permit is unlikely to be keeping a 96 square foot bedroom in there. Or you turn like that giant hall office or something into like a master suite, like set something.
Yeah, we just can't predict
Right.
what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the thing. So-
Yeah.
And so I guess it's a question of, to me, I think your point of, if we would have called that room a bedroom based on its size, although again, that's like 88 square feet. so
88
it's-
square feet.
That's
It's,
like,
Yeah. No, admittedly, it's
Small.
not big, but I believe I had a neighbor who had a much smaller
Yeah.
And that,
But I would just say, I think I think your goal is to say, how do we best predict the future? If you're going to count it as 7 later, we'd like to know that now, because that will put the future homeowner in the best position to not feel finagled, or kind of misled.
The current homeowner would be happy if we just designed it for 6.
Yeah,
But, you know, I gotta think about the future homeowners as well.
yeah,
If all they did was come in here and just block off that door and then design it for 6, you'd be denying the building.
right, yeah. And I think we would. Even if it's a small room, you'd say it's a room above the second floor, it meets the habitable criteria. We can't say that we use it for why the third floor doesn't count, but we don't use it for when the second floor counts. So I think it sounds like our advice would be 6 + 1 with the variance for the reserve size,
Or
or the wall setback.
I think it's gotta be the,
7,
it's gotta be 7
7
or,
or,
Right, I mean, like, I think we're saying that right now.
no, design it for 7.
yeah.
That's what you
Because
said.
I could meet the Title 500-foot setback of the well,
Yeah,
but I'd rather meet the 125-foot setback.
yeah. So I think what we're saying is, if the second floor looked like this post renovation, we would call it 7 bedrooms to be consistent with past practice, although, so there's nothing for us to vote on.
Even though there are people who have the 300 square foot bedrooms.
Yeah.
Many.
Yeah.
600 square
Or
foot
here's
bedrooms.
a 500 square foot living room and the 78 square
Yeah.
foot bedroom.
Yeah, something just doesn't mix.
Right.
Dan, you're talking about the on-site well?
Yes.
Yeah, because at times, if it's on a butter as well, you won't
No,
get the
I'm
plus
good on
one.
the butters.
Okay, good.
What else?
Yeah, if the direction is 7 bedrooms,
Okay.
and that the 2 attic rooms aren't gonna be counted.
Yeah, no,
I'm comfortable
that I
with
feel
that.
comfortable with, yeah.
Because
And now
moving
I've
the
seen
ceiling
it.
height is not a trivial piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a subtle change.
Just as long as they know, like, okay, so now you can't just blow out the top 3rd floor though when you renovate.
Well, because I think for that though, they'd have to like, it's not just that they dormer, because it's the height at the middle, like, you have to raise the whole
Right, they'd
thing
have
up.
to, but they could raise the whole roof and,
Well, so, yeah, I think that's the 3rd floor. Well,
it would
but-
be a big project.
Right.
It wouldn't be an
If
interior.
they did that, then they would have to get down to the walls.
Yeah,
Oh, and you know what, if they had set, if they
right,
just
if they consolidated.
something
yeah.
there.
Right.
Okay.
Sound good?
Well, thank you very much.
Okay,
Always fun.
I know that was painful.
you're
No,
getting
no,
a
no.
niche here.
Yeah, you don't want this niche.
Well, they're big though, right? They're always big.
Yeah, I just don't want to have the conversation after the fact like we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. This doesn't mean we can't have it. We can have it again in like 5 years.
Did you want a copy of that thing?
I have it.
Oh,
I
okay.
have it.
Are your regulations that you're discussing, are they available to review?
They
Not
will
yet.
be.
Yeah.
Not yet.
April 3rd?
Well, yeah, I have to
no.
provide it prior to,
That'll be
once you vote tonight and I get it ready tomorrow, I'll have to get it right in the paper,
Perfect.
assuming you,
Accept the comments if
Yep.
you want to comment.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Great.
And at the public hearing too. Yeah, but anything you want to give to us in between when we have them done and then
Okay.
hearing would be
I
good.
got a couple thoughts.
Perfect.
Large home,
Do you want to
2-bedroom
just
count
tell
issues?
us now?
Yeah.
Well,
It's like, no, I got this kind of locked down. I don't want you to change anything.
they're not complicated ones. But.
Yeah.
yeah.
All righty.
Have a good night.
Can you give me a call sometime? I want to schedule that soil testing for the ones we had to cancel.
Oh, sure.
I think the snow's going to melt pretty soon.
You do, okay.
All right.
I'll let
Thanks.
you can, I'll give you a holler.
So,
Nobody's ever come to Board of Health meeting because I thought it was going to be more fun.
It's a first. We're gonna have to remember this.
yeah, we should give you
Yeah.
a badge or something.
They're running behind.
The
Yeah.
Martyr Award or?
So, we were talking about you earlier.
We did.
Because we're talking about the meeting next week.
For the
and
water
plans
testing.
for doing the testing in Jameson.
Right.
I wanna leave.
And we were talking,
us out of having to have a discussion in the meeting, but
so, but we don't undertake projects like that without some authorization, and I don't know why they're looking to have somebody else. We would like to have Mark be out there because he's a certified soil evaluator and working with you, and whoever wants to come and observe it can come observe it. I'm not really sure why they're seeking others, and they did, they reached out to Ethan Mascoop to ask him. He doesn't have time, but I wasn't sure why somebody
Who did
in
that?
town, Roger Demler, contacted him, but he doesn't have time to do it, and he's also a Board of Health staff, so,
Right.
yeah. Anyway.
I have no idea. The first I heard of it was when you, well, I don't even know if you knew that, but the night when you sat next to me, earlier in that meeting, I wasn't even here, I was at home eating dinner, but it was on the, my wife had it on the TV.
Oh, is this a Valentine's
One of the
meeting?
views.
John Higley had come to the early part of the meeting and just kind of thrown out there, and I'm like trying to eat my dinner. Why is he doing that?
Yeah.
Just kind of threw it out there.
So I think big picture, the kind of collective feedback is, I think there's some, and again, I wasn't at the meeting on the 14th, but I think there are definitely some concerns that have been raised about the degree to which the developer is included in things and other pieces of town structure, other parties who might be interested aren't. And so I think the kind of general guidance we intend to share on the 14th is sort of our recommendation to select board, to Roger, kind of et al., is that our goal should be to kind of think about soil testing that we would do to approve a system, though we're not the approving body, is how we'd recommend approaching it, and the degree to which all parties can have access, so it's not that the developer is present or involved, and abutters don't get the notification, since we're kind of thinking about town property, that we would encourage having sort of normal channels followed in terms of who's present, who's participating, who's observing, and then also just to the degree possible to have this be transparent to other parties who might be interested, because I think there's a perception if the developer's there, town people, like town officers are there, CMND or others, that it doesn't feel the same degree that the town is doing an independent assessment, but rather the town is collaborating with the developer, which may or may not be appropriate or the plan in the long haul, but it doesn't feel as much to people like there's a critical independent assessment by the town that's looking for the town's interest independent of the developer's interest. And so I don't mean to imply that that's not happening, but I think that's a perception.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I'd like to discuss
It
it.
doesn't need to be a long discussion at a select board meeting, because then it opens up well, now the Board of Health's colluding with, I mean, it's data that the town should have.
Right. I think the testing should happen, and I think it's just to say the testing we do, we should follow the same project, the same procedures we would for another project in terms of who are the observers, how do we do that, what's the best way to get the data. And I think that's a piece where whether we do that with Board of Health, if they want to have an independent third party, great. It should just be clear to everybody who's doing it, why they're doing it, and that it feels like it follows a process.
Does the town want to pay for more? I mean, what is the point of yet someone else? I mean,
Especially if it's just
certainly
another
Mark is
agent.
qualified and has done most of them in town, and always works with whoever is there on it, and together everyone will look at the soil conditions and all the rest. So that's all, and because we just need to do the groundwater determination too, just to see if the site is even feasible, or potentially feasible. So.
And I think everybody sort of feels like people are thoughtfully engaged in trying to do the right thing, but I think the optics are off, and we just really want to make sure that people, that everybody, whatever they believe about the merits of the project, feels like this process made sense to me, and it seemed like we're following the same process we would for another project in terms of critical assessment. Does that seem like a fair way to put it?
And we weren't sure of the, for whatever was done out in the fields in the autumn. We got some
October.
paperwork on that, whether.
In October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Early October, October 9th.
Right. Was the person who was out there a soil evaluator? Yes, no? I mean, we just don't know, and.
He is, but we only did that, we were already 12 feet in the ground, working on the drainage.
And what was the drainage for? I just don't know. I missed
So was
that.
it an anecdotal observation while you were doing other work that you noticed that you didn't see groundwater?
No, he's a soil evaluator, he came out, but I normally wouldn't just go trekking onto the field to dig a bunch of holes.
Yeah.
we were already doing work.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So
So,
the observation was
wasn't the same
made.
hole, but we were able to continue the mess into a virgin section of the field. Right then and there. Had it been any later, I wouldn't have wanted to do it then because they're ball fields.
Yeah,
There's certain times you just don't want to go ripping them up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, that was why we had already planned that activity to finish the drainage that's been a mess for the better part of a decade. So we obviously just extended the excavation we had there to get to some virgin soil, and we went to another spot. And again, we'll still be limited. I mean, we're not going to go right in the middle of this
Yeah.
diamond right now.
Yeah.
Albeit the system may go there someday, but we got to be careful when we dig up in the spring.
Yeah, and that'll be something to
But
be
there's plenty of
figured out
area
at
there.
some point as
Plenty of places to go where it's not
Reasonable.
going to affect anything.
okay.
I mean, it seems odd to me though that with the drainage and just the moisture content of those fields, that
12
water
feet
would be 12 feet
Just because we haven't
or
seen it 12
14
feet.
feet. I mean, like almost no place in town is the water table that deep.
Pretty rare place in town.
Yeah. But I think
So
even,
anyway.
but I think even when we sort of looked and pulled the record for the abutting properties,
It was
they
like
weren't. they
2
were-
to 4.
Like, it just seems like a big
It's
mystery.
impossible that it would be 3 to 4. There's 12-foot drainage pits that are empty there right now.
Yeah.
11 feet below grade.
I get it probably depends on what part of the field we're talking about vis-a-vis the abutters that were
Right.
tested. Like it's a big area, so
Yeah, those are hundreds of feet away.
yeah.
The closest one from where we dug would be at Rose's.
So anyway, so that's
And
just
then
what we
would
have
be the
to,
fire station. Yeah,
try
we
to-
should go out there.
okay. I think, actually, one thing that comes to mind in terms of observers is just, it's on town property, so someone's got to figure out safety issues of having people come out to look at a big pit and how close they get to the pit and all that kind of stuff. So there probably will have to be some limitations on what people are doing there,
Should probably
visiting.
really
But
only be Mark and 1 or 2 soil value. I mean, yeah, we can't have every time.
Right.
No, yeah.
Right, but I'd say like if we're saying developers there, then we can't just have.
They don't need to
right.
be there.
Yeah, that would be my thought.
They don't really, I mean, they can go hang out on the other side of the field. They
Yeah.
don't need an audience.
there are some folks who are very keen on including them in all steps to have cooperative nature, and then hopefully also have them invite the town to testing up on Hunting Lane if they do more testing up there and that kind of thing. So
Well,
I
so
think
I'm
it's,
not going up on Honey Lane with my.
no.
I lost an entire backhoe on Honey Lane. Don't even bother.
Interesting.
Mark already remembers, were you there?
I wasn't, but Conservation told me the soil testing they were trying to get to, they got stuck at the
You weren't there when
beginning.
they did Man's property?
Yeah, I was there for that, but they also went in lower than Man's property, and that backhoe got stuck in, I don't know, a very wet area. They had maybe it's the same scenario.
I don't know. My father-in-law completely lost a backhoe.
Oh my
Lost
God.
it, man. So I don't know how they ever-
That's the one I remember with the mud. You know, Conservation wasn't too happy.
So what
Good
happened?
luck up there.
Yeah.
It's like an archaeological
So it got
dig
literally
now.
like
Lost on that property.
got lost in the
Yeah.
mud.
So in terms of I can't remember anything else from our prior discussion tonight.
yeah, I think,
Like, I think it was really.
I think we covered
I think
it.
I think the other question was just in terms of who's an agent for the Board of Health. Like, I think that's the piece that's
Yeah.
got to be kind of
did
one
you
of.
know that you were on the form as an official for the Board of Health? Or did they type that in?
Yeah.
I saw that after. That
Okay.
was
Yeah.
pretty laughable.
Yeah,
I brought the backhoe.
yeah. And so I think that piece is just for the health agents for the Board of Health are kind of, if I understand it right, but correct me if I'm wrong, our kind of role derives from the state, and so really it can only be a Board of Health agent that can be an agent for the Board of
Yeah.
Health.
So we need to make sure that their PE understands
Paperwork.
that
Right.
for any future
Right.
work they may do, which if they've done this before, I would think they would know that, but we'll make sure.
Yeah, I was totally unaware of that.
Yeah, since it was typed in, I thought you might not have known.
Yeah,
Wasn't an ink signature.
Yeah.
But, so, okay.
And then do we want to talk about the other I think the other piece that might be relevant to you is just as we talk about the other regulation changes that are being contemplated. Like, I don't know if that has, I'm just trying to think of, if Sean's over here hanging out
Yeah.
during the extended other meeting, is there anything else that's of relevance to
Well,
that?
I mean, we have to discuss them here first, right?
Yep.
So if he wants to listen, he can
Yeah.
listen.
More than
Yeah.
welcome to
Yeah.
hang out here, but,
We're discussing some potential proposed changes to our
Yeah.
regulations.
Menthol,
Yeah, that
wintergreen.
sounds like fun. I have fun.
Are you taking a hard pass?
so do you have any other questions, Russ? But I think depending on what happens next week, if they authorize that, yes, we should use, budget to pay the agent to go out, and that they authorize you to spend time and equipment on doing this, then after that, you can coordinate when, where.
Would we still need to get an application though,
and
even
then we
from the
need to,
town?
right, we need
Yeah.
to find out who's filling out the
Who's fill-
application.
Yeah, and
Whether it's-
and a plan showing where they intend to do it. I mean, the fee would be waived, but
Yeah.
we need
Me
a
and Mark should
plan.
do a site visit. If you got time, before we pick a plan.
A site visit to,
Just to, if we
To the
if we have to
field.
pick exactly where we're gonna do it on the fields, we should walk out there first.
right now with the snow cover, that's not.
Yeah,
Can't do that.
I wouldn't do it tomorrow.
Third baseline is
It
the
might be
fire
better.
department's, third baseline's the raised fire department septic system. So they had about 4.5 feet of groundwater there when it was adjusted, 4 feet.
Yeah, we don't wanna go over there anyway.
And that's why that's raised. If you go down third base, that's where their system is. So you gotta be careful. There's, Rose's is right behind there too. So I would suggest highly that, the engineer is responsible for sending me that site plan, or the Board of Health with the location of the testing. So Formato was his name, I believe, the professional engineer that was on the soil evaluation.
No,
form.
but I don't think we want to be using.
You're
the-
not using that
I
engineer?
don't think so. I think we
Yeah.
have, this would be,
So
You want
who,
someone totally, you gotta pick someone totally independent.
so who's hiring the engineer?
I don't know, that's what.
Okay.
Well, even if they ask me to hire, we gotta pick someone totally independent.
Yeah,
I know
disinterested.
you're not gonna want Paul.
What I would suggest is once the engineer is known, that's the best time to coordinate your effort, the engineer's effort, and my effort to go out there. But prior, I have all the information on all the septic systems in that area, so we could sit down and go over that, just so we don't destroy or get too close to someone's septic system. There's a few of them there right in the back to the fields. The other thing too is with that data, the engineer might be able to make a better conclusion on where they wish to test. That's their responsibility. So if we test in an area that doesn't work, it goes on the engineer, not on you, nor me. The other thing too is discussing, like I say, what I have.
Which will be on the town, just.
Right.
Yeah.
Does, in some ways, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
too much
Well,
because
okay.
it's the town's,
But it can be done. It's just a
Undertaking,
matter of
but-
testing in the right season too. We don't want to get too far past the wet season, because then the groundwater adjustments get greater and greater, and you're not seeing an
But we can't
accurate-
wait anyway, we're gonna be in the middle of baseball season.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. So you're pretty much in the soil test season right now, except.
Once you
that-
can see the ground.
Yeah, I think it's gonna warm up next week.
That would be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say probably in this
You can
month
float
or
out there,
beginning of
but-
next month.
Now,
When are they gonna start using the baseball fields?
there's like
April
a month
1st?
Float there depending on how fast it dries out, but if it's so wet they can't play,
Yeah.
we're not going there either.
Yeah, because that snow was
I mean,
a
there's a
lot of
couple
water
spots we
content.
can go and get to that are good to dig in, that we wouldn't be trampling across.
I was just gonna say, you don't wanna
But
wreck the
aren't-
fields.
Wouldn't the wastewater treatment plant be on the side, kind of like, I thought,
It's
sort
on
of
Pine
behind the
Hill side,
tennis?
Not the Jameson, not the cemetery side.
Really? Oh, I kept thinking it was gonna be closer to where they were gonna be building.
Now, just so you know,
Yeah,
there's,
which is Pine Hill. not-
Oh, yeah, I guess
not
that's right,
cemetery.
41 North Main.
there's
Eight
also
leaching
talk of
pits.
putting it up at CM&D property.
What's that?
oh
There's
really?
also talk
Oh.
of whether to
The
site
building?
it up, yeah.
Yeah, I was told of that.
There's,
So I can smell it here.
just so you know,
That's
there's,
nice.
That's gonna be great.
with the school, there's 8 leaching pits that
I
we
know
don't
where they
want.
are.
Yeah, we don't wanna destroy those.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I wanted to say, we wanna be
This
careful
has to be an
not
integrated
destroy-
approach,
Huge
yeah.
area there that's
Yeah.
not touched.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's why, there
I
it is.
also know exactly where the drainage is, because I dug it.
Okay, and we don't wanna damage that either, so.
The area near the drainage is really good.
It is.
just gotta get there. It's right at the bottom of that sledding hill.
Oh, okay. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Menthol vaping?
yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah, let's move on to our.
Okay, all right.
Keep us a
You're
little-
free, sort of. Except for next door.
Someone should come up with suggestions on a soil evaluator. Maybe the guy that just left.
Well, no,
PGO.
we've got the soil evaluator.
So
No, we need the engineer.
Well,
Yeah, we just need an engineer to draw plans and things like that, so.
and witness it, or is he just gonna witness it and the engineer just draws the plan?
You're gonna
Usually the
observe.
engineer and I agree to the
Yeah.
observation.
Yeah, they observe
It's
together.
gonna, I'll be honest, if it's all good soil, it's gonna be hard to find models. Because when you have porous material, models do not form. So you do have to do groundwater adjustments, which they
Right.
failed to do on that October 9th,
Right.
2018 data. Failing to do that is a critical issue, a critical error, and misleads what the groundwater levels truly are.
Right, they
So
put
they
NA.
have to realize that, and that's why I would like to meet with the engineer to say, listen, you know, it's all porous material. We're not probably in any way going to find models, and as soil evaluators, we know that.
So I
And
think
the engineer should be a soil evaluator too.
So I think in terms of kind of your question, I think would be independent engineer representing the engineering and one perspective on soil evaluation. I think Mark in his capacity as the agent for the Board of Health, were this another project, would be the other soil evaluator acting on behalf. I think there's a question still that I think we as the Board of Health aren't well positioned to answer, which is, my 2 cents is I think Mark's a good person to evaluate it, but I think you could say, we're still a town board, you know, and so if somebody said this should be somebody totally separate and independent to the town, because the town's all in cahoots, we can't, like, Mark will always be an agent on behalf of the Sherborn Board of Health, and so I think that's a separate question. I think my 2 cents is, I'm comfortable with the assessment, because they're, you know, we're doing that in a consistent fashion, but I think that's a question other people might disagree with me on.
Yeah, but there'd be two, so we
No,
just said that, yeah.
I totally think it's reasonable, and I think the engineer offers the non-town perspective
Right.
on it. But I think that I can see how reasonable people would say, I don't agree with that assessment. So like, I think I'm right, but I always think I'm right. Not everybody always thinks I'm right. And so I can see how somebody could feel like, if you didn't have trust in the process, you could easily feel like Mark works and is paid by Sherborn. Is this a non-Sherborn perspective that's represented? I think that you give the same assessment because it's a fact-based role, but I think people might disagree with that. I wouldn't.
But someone needs to report back to,
No, I think, like, my 2 cents is I think it should be Mark, but I can see why somebody else would think differently.
We don't want to do all this and have it be.
Perceived as not.
Right.
Right.
but that's why I
But I
just,
think we should, like, my 2 cents is I think we should follow the usual process, and I think having Mark do it would be the usual process, and I think,
Who's designing the small wastewater treatment plant? Because whoever it is, they're gonna need, the state's requiring that an engineer represent the soil evaluation, and I'm the witness to it. So, with that said, if I'm the only person out there, are they planning to use the October 9th data?
No.
No, okay, so then they're
Right.
going to
Witnessed by
need...
me.
There was a, but,
And that isn't something,
yeah.
no, there's a Formato, his name's Formato, the engineer.
yeah, I'm sure they would have him there.
They claimed he was there.
but that's
David
the, isn't that the
Formato.
developers and?
Formato is his
That's
name.
not a disinterested party.
So,
Yeah,
No,
it's
so
not.
this,
Right.
right, so we're,
still
I
need to
feel like
hire
we're saying
someone.
the same thing again and again.
Yeah.
We need a disinterested engineer who's also a soil scientist, and Mark needs to go out there and observe it as well. I don't think anyone can
Together.
argue with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
I agree with you,
yeah, so
100%.
I think that's just what we recommend, and
Right.
who's gonna argue with that?
And I think the state's
Who can
gonna
argue with
require...
that?
Yeah, but not the people who are gonna be doing the hiring,
Right,
so.
that's fair.
And when it comes time for the state to review the plans, they're gonna say, who's the engineer representing the applicant? You know, so it should follow the same suit that we always follow. In the application, no fee if that's the case, but
So
definitely...
you're saying his engineer,
Well, then
a disinterested
still need the
engineer,
Still
and,
need a third party.
right, so if he wants to have his person
Yeah.
there, that's fine
So
too,
be
but
it.
I don't want
More
that
the
person
merrier.
doing the heavy legwork, because that is obviously a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay.
Menthol vaping? Menthol
Yep.
vaping?
Yep.
Can we start with the cesspool? Can we just?
We can do whatever makes you
I
happy.
don't know.
Pools,
I just-
vaping. Yeah, okay.
It's all glamour.
Good night.
The vaping one is in there, though.
I know, I just want to go my chair's business store. I got one,
Yeah,
two,
he's
three, four,
like jumping
five.
the gun.
Oh, that, yeah, well, that one.
I just want to check my
actually
boxes. I'm
should get-
triply flexible.
That can get crossed off,
We
actually.
can just do it in the flow of the rest, so.
Whatever makes people happy.
All right, we're doing okay, sort of.
We're on our rigs.
I'm sleepy. All right, cesspools.
And I know we've talked about it, I just want to make sure I have a mental image. So today we vote on the regulations. Those regulations are then published twice in a newspaper, and then what's the next step after that?
Then you have the public hearing.
Okay, and then after the public hearing, if there are no
We get
motions.
comments.
Yeah, you
have a
get your
comment period.
comments. Yeah, you can vote that night if you
Depending on the
choose.
comment.
If you choose.
Right.
Because I think we would have to have, if we don't vote that night, we have to post and go through another public hearing.
Why?
No, you can vote, you can't have another public, unless you want to have another public hearing.
Oh,
But you
after
can
we hear
vote
the comments, we
If
can,
the
As
public
long,
hearing.
as long as you afford a public hearing, you can vote on them later.
Yeah, you can
You
vote
have to
on
afford
So,
that
so
public
the
hearing.
the
Okay.
only reason we wouldn't vote on it is if we got comments that we felt were so compelling that we want to actually
Make
change,
substantial edits.
revise
Right.
these draft regs. That would be the only case that we wouldn't vote on it then.
and if
Is
it
that
was
correct?
significant enough that we couldn't make the amendments right there.
Then and there,
Right.
right.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, and is there any kind of gavel? Nothing.
I think there's one in the drawer.
Is there a drawer?
I think there's a drawer.
Is there a gavel?
So, and this public hearing, it's
There's a
part of
gap.
our regular meeting, Ellen? Oh. It's,
part-
so it's like, so we'll have our regular meeting for an hour and a half and then we'll have
Yeah.
the hearing?
Yeah,
Okay.
because there's going to be variance hearings that night.
So I'm gonna drink coffee. All right.
All right, cesspools.
I mean, first, let me just say that I think these are coming along really, really well.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased about, Daryl, you did a lot of the yeoman's work, and so thank you for that. I want to acknowledge that. And
So-
I think it's, just sort of tweaking at this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't view these as the be-all and end-all, but I really want to
Oh,
have things in place in
You don't,
case things start
none of us
happening.
are in disagreement.
So,
I just had a few tweaky
yeah,
questions
no, I
and
thought
comments.
that your comment here, the if the property, that would be good, I thought, to address that one.
Like
Pull
define.
what we had for property on the one about number of wells. That a
Yeah.
property can be a collection of lots, but it's
Parcels, yeah.
currently being treated as
Right.
for the single family.
Right, so there's lots or parcels, tax ID parcels, but multiple parcels can comprise a property.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I was getting to, Daryl, so I
Yeah.
think we should be completely consistent in that.
So
And
if we
define it.
like the language in the number of wells, we could copy it there somewhere. Or, because we don't have a central definitions section.
Yeah, so multiple lots associated with one business or residence shall be considered a single property. We should make it a capital P, Ellen?
Okay.
Single property, because we're defining, we're defining property.
If you
Okay.
want to mimic Title V, and after seeing this, I looked it up, they define property as a facility. And they say any real property, including any abutting real property, and any buildings thereon, which is served, is proposed to be served, or could be in the future served by a system, which is a septic system, or systems where a legal title is held by, controlled by the same owner or owners, or B, the local approving authority or department otherwise
That's too long,
determines.
yeah, no.
I mean, you wouldn't need to put all that in there, just
Yeah.
use the word.
Yeah, but they're going by septic, and this is different. We're having a more generic term for property, because we want to be able to reference it in several different
I
ways.
think it's
for
probably
consistency.
consistent with that to sort of say if the pattern of use is for a single use
Yeah.
comprising multiple
Right.
parcels or lots, we would think of that as its entity.
Yeah, I actually think it's okay the way
Yeah.
we say it later.
You
So I
mentioned
think
property.
we should just define it in the beginning. Or do we usually have a definition section? Should we just have a little or should we just not be that
I
codified?
didn't bring my regs with me.
But it seems like we should define property in our regs. It would just make our lives
There
easier.
mu- Do you want me to go get?
Title V doesn't have
Let's
the
just
word
look at it and we'll
property
just see.
defined, what they define as the word
I
facility.
promise we'll decide
It
nothing.
just got the word property in it, so it works either
So
way.
we have to note that Ellen's going to get the piece, we don't have to call anything, but we shouldn't say anything that we want Ellen to write down because she's not here.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you can answer my question though, perhaps Mark or Daryl, because it says here, the board has determined that they don't adequately protect public health, safety, or the environment. That's just not our opinion. That was the state, I thought in Title
This
V
came
actually
from
said that.
Rhode
So I would
Island.
reference that, like,
I think this,
This was the language that Dover used. That
Dover, okay.
particular
So I think
line
the state
came
of Rhode
from
Island
Dover.
did it, but I
And
don't
Rhode
think the
Island
state of,
does,
but the
yeah.
state of Massachusetts hadn't.
the
like, I think-
Commonwealth hadn't done it? I
They
thought
define cesspools as, I can look up that definition.
I
for
thought
you,
they,
too.
not the
But your point-
definition, but that they felt that they.
were lousy. I think
Right.
that, I think what Mark has said is that's what they thought, but then the uproar about getting rid of them had made them not follow through on that position.
Yeah, cesspools are non-conforming systems is what they say.
So that's
Yeah.
basically conceptual agreement, you know, or we could even just say consistent with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the board. So here's my thing, I'm so cynical about this stuff, is that I don't want people just
Just
saying
say the
that
board just
we're
decided
making
this.
our own decisions
Right.
and judgments, and that if we have the strength of being consistent with the Commonwealth, I think that helps.
Which was part of adding the references to the other regs and the other
Right, I just
section.
have,
So,
why not say,
So I guess the question, should that be in the regulation or should that be in the public
We
hearing?
couldn't hear you.
has determined,
Just because like I think, like for me, the fact that the regulations we're building are very similar to what was developed for Dover, for what was developed for the state of Rhode
okay,
Island.
I didn't realize that you took the language. It's fine.
that particular thing I did take from Dover just because I was impressed
fine.
that
It's fine.
that sentence
It's
is
fine.
something that they
I just,
had in
I'm
place,
just brought it
so,
up,
yeah.
because I'm
No,
used to
I
like
think-
that kind of,
Yeah.
No, and I could
I think it's a
see
sound point.
maybe a clause at the end, like comma, consistent with the, Mass DEP
But if ten, like for me,
designation
some
of
of that's like,
cesspools as
for the reg, I
non-conforming
would leave
systems or
this in. I
something,
think the
but
minutes in discussion, if somebody said, what was the basis for that?
Or we can just
I would
say-
want that
Okay,
reflected in the
okay,
Board of
that's
Health record, but I don't think we need it in the reg, because
okay.
10 years from now.
I'm okay with it, I'm just bringing it up.
Yeah.
What was
So,
What were we talking
We
about?
did,
no, my first comment, that I was just asking the question, like, do
We're-
we
Oh,
want
and-
we're not
site
incorporating that.
support? But I'm okay leaving that out too, so
Okay.
I don't, so do we have a definition section? in
not.
our regs? Okay, so let's just keep it simple and not add it as a definition, we'll just define it in that sentence, Daryl, the same way
Okay.
that we define it later.
So,
Are you gonna mark these up and give these to Ellen, Daryl? Is that easiest, or should?
Yeah, well, I don't know what you're
well,
doing.
so I think that, let's be very specific so that
Okay.
we can then say that we voted on
I
this.
could see where it might have to go property definitions, so each time we refer to property in the cesspool section, although I don't think it gets referred.
But I think we're
to.
also
If
using it in the
was-
wells section, right?
We are,
And so I think what we want to do is to take the language from the wells section.
And just put it
include here.
Yeah.
okay.
So that multiple lots associated with one business or residence should be considered a single property for the purposes of this requirement. And so you're saying, Lisa, pull that sentence?
Yeah, but I'm trying to figure out, the board of this, that cesspools, how about, so we could,
So that-
so we could say their presence at a property, hold on, is considered, so before, so what we could do is, see this little paragraph here? Like the board has determined that cesspools do not adequately protect public health and safety or the environment. Their presence, we can add, at a property is considered an automatic failure, And then in the very next sentence, we can define, we can just use a property.
Use that same
Yeah,
sentence
yes.
And
from
so,
before.
so to that sentence would be, multiple lots associated with one business or residence shall be considered a single property for the
Or we
purposes
could just
of
say a property is defined
But why not even
Yeah.
just pull that sentence? Because
Yeah.
either, like, this is
It's
section
fine, it's
7
fine,
versus
it's fine,
section
you're
1.
right, yeah.
And so I would say,
Yeah, okay, so that way now we have like a
yeah, do you see what we're
segue.
saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're just
and-
gonna add that as a.
Okay, and then,
as a
and
So
then.
did you want me to do this, or you'll do this? What's best?
Would you get it to me tomorrow?
And actually, when you
Then-
sent this, do I have it in Word form?
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
As long as just a person does it, it doesn't.
Right.
You don't want me, because my handwriting's horrible, and like, you guys would be like calling me going, what does that say?
Oh, no, I'm gonna type.
Okay.
I don't think Ellen
So
wants
we
my
got that. And then Daryl, henceforth, every time we use the word property, you have to make it capital P,
Okay.
because that means it'll refer back to how we just defined it. So if the property, change of property. Okay, so then in B, again, I was struggling because we hadn't really defined property, but now we can,
Okay,
We
could you
don't-
say for a property, and that's it?
no, so here you need to be clear that you're talking, B's only referring to residential.
Right.
So you need the word residential in there,
Okay.
because you start distinguishing from residential in the later one. So B,
Okay.
if the cesspool for a residential property,
Property,
capital P,
okay.
blah, blah, blah.
Okay,
Then you say, C is if a cesspool serves a non-residential, I added, or multi-purpose facility, because I was completely thinking
Of like 24 North Main or something like that.
or with the stable with the
Yes.
apartment.
Right.
Yeah,
Because it's a
that's a great
mixed use,
point.
so,
Yes, that's a
anyway,
good- yep.
the old mixed use things. Okay, so that's that. And then I guess I'm asking a legal question here, that we're saying if you're being served right now by a cesspool, even if it's not in failure, we're now saying you have to immediately replace it. I think that's going to be a dicey legal position to take,
Right.
to be honest.
Well, and
There
so,
are places that do the moment a set, in Massachusetts, I don't remember which towns, but the moment a cesspool is identified, it's out.
but I guess my
I
question
don't
is,
know if, Mark, if you know
why-
which
why are-
towns those
Well,
why
might
are
it
be.
depends
agency
on
different?
Doesn't
how it
Why
gets
what?
identified.
well, then how are agency different then? Because we're saying, if I'm
No,
selling
no, oh, they're
my-
totally different, because A is about if you're going to be selling.
But so you're saying like A gives me more so I have a stricter requirement on me if I have no property transfer than if I have a property transfer, which would seem to be.
I'm saying, I think this is dicey that we're saying.
So you're saying
I'm questioning.
right, so you're
If
saying
you can
instead
just
of-
say, oh, it's not for sale, it could actually pacify, but right now, I'm gonna make you dig up and totally upgrade your
Yeah.
septic, just because, I don't know, it's because you
There
say
are-
immediately, you said immediately.
I know,
and
there
and
are
I think
towns that.
that's pretty rigorous.
Immediately according to the process, and we discussed this at the last meeting, that process
long?
could be 2 years.
Well, I was gonna ask you, what's immediately mean,
So, but,
too, like.
again, there are towns that require
So can we
that
just,
the
So how are-
identification
Who's
of
gonna
the cesspool
identify it?
means
So if it's
out.
not for sale and it's not in failure,
but what if we just
how's it
took
gonna
out?
be identified?
But if we just took out immediately, if immediately doesn't meet immediately with the standard process, should we just take out that highlighted portion? and
So
say-
does that mean, are we gonna send Mark out to every non-residential, to every
Say,
like stable?
every
I
cesspool
want
in
you
town, we're
to
gonna-
inspect and see if there's any cesspools, and then you're gonna go and
No.
order it?
Yeah.
The way it's done in other towns is not to require, but as they are
Inspection?
discovered, they,
So when are they gonna be
Yeah.
discovered? I'm just,
But I
the
was just saying,
reality
like,
is, they're
if-
gonna be discovered when they're gonna wanna do something.
Right.
Which gets back to A.
But what if you had somebody earnestly come in for something separate and said, oh, my cesspool's over here, or I'm putting in a new well, my cesspool is over here. You're saying that to put in my well, because my house is dry, I have to replace my,
This isn't for a house, and that means you're doing something different. Again, this is for non-residential. We're just saying, if you have a cesspool at like your barn, okay,
yeah.
you have to change it right now, immediately, if we found it out. And that just seems,
I think Matt has the right idea, just take out the word immediately.
Like if you
but
just
then we
take-
have to give them a time frame.
Well,
Then you
and
could
that
say according to the
falls under
process of a standard failed system.
Yeah, that falls under
2
the
years.
process, which is 2 years.
Okay, that would be fine. I think
I think
it's
it
just
brings it
too
to-
punitive.
Which I don't think I don't think our intent is to punish people whose properties have a cesspool. I think our intent is to say, in the least disruptive way that's still effective and expedient, we want to get cesspools out of circulation because we don't think they do the job that we need a septic.
So it shall be replaced according to the process,
for a
just
state
take out
of
the word
system.
immediately?
Yeah.
Okay, and then,
Okay, and the idea of that non-residential was to get at if a business could potentially be having a bigger impact and it's,
Higher nutrient
you know,
levels.
something, but again, some of this is drawn from other places that treated things differently and.
I know, I was also
All different
thinking of a
schedules
recent example that we had with the additional outbuildings and compound type situations, so.
So I think we'll pull that, but that C otherwise looks good. And how about D? Do we feel?
And
like-
then D, I said it should be replaced first and as described in B, but I was just referencing the.
Perfect. So with the changes we have, does everybody feel comfortable with cesspools or the elimination thereof?
Yeah, I mean,
I think this is the one of all the things we're talking about. I think this will get the most pushback because I think there are people who will say, "I passed Title V. Why are you making up rules?"
Yeah, but
our
most of
piece
those-
is like this is not because this is one where, to your point, Rebecca, like we actually don't think this is doing what we need.
no, but this is only for residential properties. It's only if you're going to sell it or transfer it, right? That's one trigger, and I think that's perfectly legit and very similar to what other towns.
And so
or if it's in failure,
Right.
I
So
mean,
if you're saying, "I'm doing
we're
a
not
building
saying like,
permit,"
hey,
yeah.
if you're not selling your house and you have a cesspool
Right.
and it's working fine, we're not making people dig
And I
that
think
up.
that's a balance we're
Yeah.
fighting, is to say, like, you could do a building permit, there are other things you could do, because we sort of had this discussion of, like, you want to put in a window,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be that you have to install a new septic system, and that's not the intent.
Yeah.
But I think this is saying, the goal over time is to send down all of these, because we don't think they do the work we need them to.
Right. Eventually, they're going to be gone from town.
Perfect.
And as scary as this sounds, it would be doing right by the neighbors to. all
Well, and
of
doing
these
right by
properties.
whoever's you're transferring that property to, is to
Yeah.
say a hole in the ground
Yeah.
is not the solution you're looking for.
So,
Distribution box, H20 or equivalent,
I'm
because we're good
happy.
with cesspools.
Oh,
We're good with D boxes.
That's the McIntyre.
Yeah.
amendment.
And we talked about this some at the last meeting. Do you guys have any questions about what the reasoning was, or are you good to go? The basic idea is that the H20 is a higher crush strength, and so that we have seen some properties where not the lower quality box can have issues when heavy equipment goes over it,
oh,
and so that
Yeah.
was the rationale.
okay. Sounds good.
Perfect.
It will be a little more expensive. I don't know if we
Did
know
we get
how
a
much
number
more
on that?
expensive.
Yeah, he did give, it was, I think he said less than 100. It's only a small
Really?
box.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It makes a difference.
Okay.
Oops, sorry.
Semi-public water supply, I just, again, wanted to clarify that we are only talking about things beyond the single family. I think it's implicit, but when you say including but not limited, you're not being explicit, so I just thought I would.
Okay.
So we don't need, we can just,
Yeah, then.
You don't need the word
This one we
structures.
had a hard time with just because, you know, two houses have to.
Like, what do you do for like Bullitt Street, where you're sort of like, okay, this is two houses, you've got the campus design,
Yeah.
do you now need to go through this whole thing?
well, that's why I was saying, were you trying to get at anything beyond single-family residential, that if you have a single water system serving anything beyond a single-family residential, are we kicking people into
Well,
this,
so-
or is
so-
that not your intent?
So I think the question is like, if you have something like the cluster housing that we're talking about for the planning board, and you say that people are not quite at a public water supply, but you're 90%.
I want that water
Right,
sampled.
I think that was what we're trying to get at.
Okay,
is to say
but
if
what
you-
about, what about the compound situation?
I think
where-
that's one where this leaves that ambiguous in a way that we struggled to figure out how to clarify, because for something like Bullard, that here's
Yeah,
the
that's what I
primary
was-
residence and here's a secondary residence from a related party, whether that's an in-law
Or
suite or.
beyond a single owner, I'm just trying to so how do we capture that? Because
Except with. a
multiple
condo association.
multiple dwellings
Yeah.
is Bullard too.
Yes.
So you're still capturing that in, so beyond us,
Well, so I think it's a question of, in that case, we would consider Bullard a single property, right?
So,
Like with our definition of properties that we've defined previously in the assessment.
well, this just says multiple dwellings, so you could have one giant parcel that has 8 cluster houses on it,
But
and
I
we'd
think
still
those-
want that.
But, right, so, yes. But I guess the
It's
question
not,
is
it's not simple.
like, I guess, if you had a Bullard Street and you had separate ownership for the carriage house, like, not, I don't mean to, I'm using that property as an example to illustrate the challenge, not that this applies to that property. But if you had somebody who had a separate deed and ownership to the carriage house
Wait,
and
I'm
the big
thinking.
house, like, you would say that that should fall to this, as I think something like clustered housing or other things that are approaching the water requirement for a public water supply. Like, the problem I want to solve is when we're really close to it, but people are like, no, it's 9,999 gallons, not
Right.
10,000.
Right. And, right.
And so I guess is there, like, the requirement for the public water
Maybe
supply?
What's our goal? What's our goal?
Maybe if they're
I
related,
think it's to say that if you have large properties that are a series of spout wells that are just under a public water supply, that the risk to those people.
No, okay, so no, I'm talking.
treat them
be
in the aggregate.
quantitative, like, we need to
Yeah.
be quantitative and
Oh,
specific.
so actually maybe the,
We need a cutoff.
Like a
maybe
1,000
going
gallons.
back, all right, part
Or
of this
whatever.
is that the stuff that's in,
I think everything
not
should
in
be
bold
monitored.
is the existing regulation, so part of it, we're dealing with trying to do something about that. What if we just say, this goes back to how to define the aggregation by property, by project, by, somehow, how do we define how it hangs together? And then say, if that in the aggregate is serving over 25 people, you're a that is not regulated by the state.
Because what's the
Then
cutoff
we
for the
want
state
it
again?
to
Is
be-
it 50? What's the cutoff for the state?
25.
25.
25.
So if
But
you're-
there are loopholes,
15
such
service
as Abbey Road is over 25 people, and that is treated as private. So it comes out of Abbey Road, and it was coming out of the fields.
Well, is 25 the number? I mean, like.
Yeah, 25 is the
No,
number.
is that the number we want? Like,
Oh.
I'm just
Right,
saying.
like-
I mean, maybe we want 15, I don't know.
Right, let's.
If we just use the state level, which on that,
We
we
could
can
say-
change it later idea, but if we want to say, we're only doing what the state
But-
would have done anyway at
But let's say
25
there was
people.
10 people.
Yeah.
Would we say that that should be a semi-public water supply if it's
Because what
serving
about
10
that
people?
family that just had
And
10
8
kids?
bedrooms.
That family.
No,
so-
and that's what I'm saying, is
Right,
I
the
think
thing
I'd be
is that if they're
comfortable
not
with the
blood relatives,
25
that should,
to...
I think it should be separate, I think it should be monitored if they're not relatives, because, you know, one person could be on chemotherapy and another person could have.
Well, but then it could be their choice. I'm trying to get at the things that have slipped through this loophole that
So if a
DEP has.
so if a property is the
With
Well, that's
with
what
how
happens.
about
That's not-
with more than, I'm almost getting back to more than one owner though. Like, so there's, you know, so you could have a property like Bullard that has multiple houses, like
Well,
an
or peop-
extended family, but there's one name for that compound on the tax assessors. They didn't subdivide the
Right.
property.
What if a condo association is the owner? I don't know how those
We're
things work.
non-corporate, single end, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It just could, so maybe the number, or what about gallons per day? Like, could we look at,
Yeah,
at,
I'm only using the 25 because
Maybe
then
25 is
we're
just easier.
pegging it, just like the 2,000 cutoff for
So how would
the
we use the 25?
EHIR, DEP uses 2,000 and they recommend it as a standard, you know, threshold for going into another set of requirements, so.
I think 25 is a reasonable number. Like, I think that's
then
a
we could
lot, that's a lot better
tweak it.
than where, the way it
Yeah.
is right now.
Yeah.
I'm
Because
not
I think
comfortable with it.
so if we had a cluster housing that had 4 homes in a cluster, we would say not a semi-public water supply. If there are 6 homes or 7 homes, depending on the
Probably,
bedroom
yeah.
count, then it would sort of kick over.
Yeah. Or we could say 20. I like the idea of using a number, though, that has some precedence.
Right.
So then it's just how we define that group of, and that's the part, because it's.
So I think it's serving an average
But we're
of more
saying
than
any
25
water system that supplies
more than
more than
25
25
In the
people.
aggregate.
Not an average, over 24.
Because-
No, in
Over
aggregate, yeah.
24.
In
In aggregate,
aggregate.
we can word it any way we want.
See, but Abbey Road, for example, might be able to make the argument that it's not in the aggregate because each individual well is treated as an individual well supplying 24 people.
But if they did that,
But it is one project, right? That
But-
put in
but-
multiple wells to come into that
but
threshold.
if you could say like a subdivision is one project.
Yeah,
Each
that's the
house
whole
has its own
point.
Yeah,
well.
Ivy Lane.
Yeah, like for me, I think it's hard for me to get past everything to say
Right.
that how do we make it, like what's the threshold? If we think the threshold should be 25, then you say somebody can get cute and say it's 24. Great, that's how this all
Yeah,
works.
but we're at least putting
No,
some
but then
kind
we
of
shouldn't be doing anything because,
Then if it's, but I'm not saying it should be 24. Like I
Oh,
think it's a
okay.
question of, if you're saying it should be 24 or 25 and somebody can do 24, they can. And if we say 10, they could do 9. And that's okay. Like we have to figure out what the
Or
threshold is.
16, I mean, we can make.
except if it was a bona fide 25, otherwise they'd pick up the state regulations.
That's right.
Right,
I was
so what
gonna
about-
say,
that's-
pick it
But
right
What
up.
about 15?
But what if the wells are required to satisfy setbacks? Like if Abbey Road said we have 4 wells and they're 150 feet away from each other, then for me, I'm okay with the fact that it was done with one project because each of those is a compliant well that's satisfying the setback. If you're saying I've got 4 wells that are 6 feet apart from each other, but I'd like a variance because they're all my own wells, to me that sort of functioning as one super well that's just got 3 straws, but it's the same cup. You know what I mean? Like what if you build in, for projects served by multiple wells, the wells must satisfy the setbacks that would be required for unrelated.
Well, I think we have to look at what we've been through. The fields was a major concern. And with the fields, the issue was they were putting in non-innovative technology, a regular septic with wells all behind it, all rolling down towards it. So those wells would have never been tested on a routine basis after they were approved. It wasn't the intent of this to get more than a single family to be tested on a regular basis as they do
Right.
for public water supply, and if that's the case, then leave it the way it is, and then case by case, if they come in and say, well, we're only 3 houses, the board can take them case by case and decide if you need a
But so I
waiver.
think, or is it just if you have 2 houses unrelated, then you should test it because you don't know it's like any system serving multiple unrelated owners is semi. Like
Well,
that
they could not be married, and then, or they could be a same-sex couple, and they're not related. They could, I mean, there could be so many different permutations on the
I'm a
ownership.
same-sex couple that we own 2 properties that are next to each other, but we don't live together, but we share a well. It's hard, like, it could happen. Like, I think the question is, you don't.
But I'm okay, like, I mean, we have to
Yeah, I
decide,
don't
what
know
are we
if-
trying to
okay.
protect
Yeah.
here?
So,
Like, I'm struggling with this
maybe
one.
the way I might be comfortable giving up on this is the EHIR section that's been amended says if you're going to have a large system at
Right.
9999, then you have to evaluate what
The impacts
more
are.
carefully the impacts
Okay.
and have provisions to make sure that those impacts don't happen.
Right,
And maybe at some point we add, and monitoring will be required to
Right.
ensure something and capture it there, because
Yeah.
that is,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
Mark pointed
Because
out,
I
that
think
is
that-
more the goal is, right. And then we'll have to look at some of these other things, although by the time we write a regulation or have a situation that tells us that we need it, it's too late to implement. But, for example, if they were going to put in multiple wells for 41 North Main, and it's going to have a restaurant, it's going to have a market, and they're just going to divide up somehow and fall below threshold, but that's really serving a public who assumes that we've got good quality going on a more guaranteed basis. That would be tricky,
But I think
No.
like Heritage,
but
I mean, is Heritage a public water supply?
Semi.
well, there is no such thing as a semi, right? Like,
No, I
it's
think
either a
we-
community well could be.
Heritage is tested as a public.
Walgreens
It's monitored as
so, yeah,
water.
actually.
The Heritage is tested.
Right, so I think
So
that if you're saying
Heritage
there's a restaurant, I would
Yeah.
imagine
Yes.
we'd cross the threshold.
Yeah.
That we say, you are like Heritage, you're likely to be subject to the same.
But they're already,
Right, 'cause
right, but
even
they're
a
already
coffee shop would be a
subject,
different
yeah.
category. It would
Right.
still probably.
So I think it
but-
sounds like
Okay, so
we
we're
would take
probably.
this-
DEP does it on
So
a
I think
case.
we're not illuminating this, we're just making no changes to the semi-public water supply
Yeah,
regulation.
giving up, okay.
The
That's okay.
DEP does it on a case-by-case basis anyway. And last year in their like addendum or whatever it was that they sent out in the middle of the year, because there were so many projects where they were doing what Abbey Road did, which was to put in, sub-threshold clusters and call them private. They actually are doing each one, not everyone is as lucky as Abbey Road and they're getting monitored. So, I mean, I think we should not.
But what I would say is, I think people
Maybe
beat the
they should
system
be monitored.
in many domains,
Yeah.
each and every day around
They'll
all
find a way
regulations.
around whatever we
I don't
write
think,
down.
like, I think for us, I think your point, Lisa, is where is the threshold at which danger is introduced?
Yeah.
Not, is it obnoxious that people are doing this cute stuff to beat the regulation? They will do that all the time,
Yeah.
and that can't be
Right.
the
Right.
problem we're trying to solve.
No.
Because our mission
Right.
is to say, like, where do we think it's dangerous?
Well, it is.
Yeah, I think
for
they
the-
should all be monitored.
Yeah, but that's just not that's not gonna happen.
Like, if you say that, like, what's the threshold? Is it 2 houses together is okay, but 3 houses is too many?
Right.
Is it 3, or is it
Right.
4, is it 4, is it 5? I think all those, to be able to defend that it's not arbitrary in terms of what the division is a subtle point. So my 2 cents is, think about this
Which
in
is
the
why I
end.
was
Right.
falling back on the 25, just because one could point and say, well, if they thought 25 was the critical number, then.
Right.
And you have
But what
to wonder
about
where they
saying-
got the 25. How do
But
they
if-
pull 25 from a hat?
No, that's like
Yeah, we don't
bigger
know
than,
that.
right, we don't know, but it's certainly bigger than any family that you would
Right.
have. Like, that's not like,
Yeah.
And I think part of the rationale behind that is if people start feeling less connected, because they are part of a bigger group where the responsibility for it has been kind of moved away from them, or the instant awareness of it, even though not everybody knows right away that they've got their own well in town and things like that, or septic. But,
Well, and
Why don't we specifically say something like, and will be monitored on a case-by-case basis? Because there won't
think
be
we
that
just-
many.
no, no,
I think we
no.
just scrap
First of all, we're not monitoring them. We're asking
No, I
them to
mean, the
monitor.
decision whether or not it gets evaluated.
But
My
we
2
still need a
cents is-
threshold.
I think that
True.
we don't have a threshold. I think we should just table this one to say,
Yeah.
if it's this hard to find the right spot, this is not the burning platform we
Yeah.
have about what we need to change.
Right.
and
I think it's good to put on the back burner and not forget about it, and then probably more as we're learning more about these current proposed projects, we're gonna get smarter about this stuff too, I think, and maybe that line will become,
Well, I think it just as we have the experience of what are the projects and what's the problem we're trying to solve. I think right now the problem, I think what we're responding to is to say this was one of the gaps we've seen in multiple projects we're trying to fill in Sherborn regs.
Yeah.
I think that we're filling this gap in a different section of the regulation, and so it's okay to not
Yeah,
change this
from
one. I
a
think
different
that
approach.
as the dust settles, we may look back and be like, we thought that was going to be a sufficient approach. We learned that it wasn't. Here's our next iteration, because this isn't the last time that Board of Health regs will be updated.
Yeah.
And if I can just say, I will give credit to the well drillers. They are trying to convince larger projects to do the right thing, such as deep drilled wells over at the Whitney Farms versus shallow. And they went with public water supply over at the fields
Which is
versus
great.
all those. So sometimes I think the market pushes that, maybe as well. I don't know for sure, but
Well, let's
I
let's
think that the results of the area of impact analyses might have been.
might have pushed it a little further than the market.
Frankly
Okay.
speaking of number of wells.
yeah.
So, okay.
So this one I think we struggled with. I think we ended up.
I like the change to residents. That's
Yep.
good.
I think this is okay. I think it's okay. I think that I was okay with the rest of the language.
So let's say that we've got a property, and again, I use 41 North Main not to be specific to that project, but just to think about the
Yeah.
issues it raises. If we say, here's this property, the other parcel's on the other side of the railroad tracks, our well is on that parcel, we're bringing that water to this parcel to serve this, then we're saying that that would be compliant because multiple property units are part of a single project. And as such, that would be one property, one sort of Meta property, one well, copacetic.
It would end up being a public water supply.
So it may be a
In
public
that,
water
but-
supply, but we'd say the fact that you're getting your well from this other parcel you own and bringing it to this parcel and are not combining them into single lots, that is
It says
compliant.
installation of an additional wells to supply a multi-dwelling project, blah, 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 shall require the submittal of an application to the board for evaluation. So we're covered there, I think.
And also, if you look, right now, there are things happening that fly in the face of there shall be a separate well for each house. That's where our regulation currently stands. So this is an improvement.
Yeah.
To allow the things that have been
Right.
happening.
So that beginning part, that's coming out though, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
No, you mean the semi-public?
Italicized part.
Under, no,
What's in
under
italics
number.
there?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
number 12.
Yeah, yeah, oh, that's what it is
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Is that what it, yeah. Yep. And then I thought I don't think I had comments on the rest of it. I thought that, oh, yeah. The only other comment I had was in the bedrock disruption. I saw there was no monitoring requirement or offering
Yeah,
for
we
monitoring.
didn't get around to, right,
Okay.
who,
What?
you know, we played around with the idea of only abutters as opposed to everyone within the radius.
Quarter miles. Not that big.
Also, which tests specifically?
I had a list. I gave those to David.
Oh,
He had the
okay.
list.
Oh,
There's just a few metals and then the nitrates and the,
yeah, okay.
I mean, it wasn't like an exhaustive.
So-
So that's, if we need to do this a step at a time, I mean, notifications definitely absolutely the first step, because then we can also just counsel people like, do RCRA 8 metals and nitrates and.
And that's,
You know,
what we would require in what they had to send out, is we could specify some
like
language,
say,
and fill in
you,
the blanks for
you
a
know,
few things,
we
but
recommend that you consider testing your water.
these
for
parameters.
Parameters, yeah.
So, and then it could just be a recommendation.
And we also, they have to give us a plan, so if we think their plan sounds bad, we just don't let them do it. Or tell them to make modifications to the plan.
So let's say,
The only thing I'm wondering if we should insert in there is if someone starts like noticing that their water is turning orange, like a cease and
right.
desist kind of piece, that, you know, if any of the abutters so notified.
but I think it gets tricky, because like, I'm on board with that. If I think,
I'm
if
just
I'm,
trying to
if I'm
think.
42 North Main, and you say, hey, they're starting to blow the top off the hill, and you're like, yep, my water turned black, cease and desist.
No, you'd have to demonstrate that, or.
But
What
like,
about saying a
like if I said,
period
like, I
of-
bought manganese on the internet, I put it in my water, because I want them to stop this project.
You're going to a lot of effort, so A for effort.
Yeah. No, but I'm just saying, like, if we're saying,
No, what about
what we're saying is
having
that it's cause, and like, again, I don't, it's not my style, but you could say, I've been to a bunch of meetings, I can't get my needs met. They started blasting from the start of this project. I put manganese in my water, I sent that water to the lab. The lab said, yep, your water has manganese, and now, on behalf of the Board of Health, there's a cease and desist. We're sort of establishing that causation. And we're saying, we're
Yeah,
so.
but that's
think it's
that's like immediate harm to health though, like if it's that,
I
if it's
just think
that
it's like-
obvious,
Yeah.
like I just don't think that, you know, we have to have some kind of.
I'm open to it, I just think like
Chutzpah.
that's a piece that we're sort of saying, if an abutter tests their water and says, I have manganese in it, we're saying, you can't do
No,
this.
well, first of all, we're telling people, test your water before they do anything.
Right.
So you're gonna have a baseline.
Yep,
But there are delays that happen all the time, and you just say you need to stop.
but like, what's the end of the
Evaluate,
cease and
and then you can continue.
desist? Like, you boss it.
I'm being hyperbolic.
No, but like, I just, like, I'm not saying that we can't, that it's not the right approach. I just think it's a piece we have to think very specifically about. If we're saying that we are saying anytime this changes, it is a consequence of blasting, then how do you tell somebody, hey, this, like, at low levels,
Yeah,
flavorless,
no,
neurotoxic chemical, we're gonna let them blast again now, you should totally keep testing. Like, how do we undo that end of it?
Well, the problem is if you don't do something, then they know that there's no leverage, and they're just gonna blow us off anyway.
I think the leverage is like the abutter is suing
ability
you.
to do it.
Well, and they have the data
the resident-
beforehand
Right.
to do it.
Right.
But it's still like, in the interim, that, like, I wish.
I'm not
yeah.
saying we
No,
can't
I
do
know,
it, just
there's
don't know where
not,
it
there's
went.
not an easy answer, just like with this other
No.
stuff.
So the question is, do we think we're going to resolve this tonight? Or is this one of those,
I think we should.
we can
I
have,
think
we
should
can
take-
have rapid
No.
fire
No.
Well,
public
I
hearings
can
to
tell you that
amend.
there's a
I
case
think
right
we
now
should
while
take
we.
that, I think we should take it as it is, because this is better than what we started with just nothing.
So this
And
is
so, like, you know what I mean, like,
The old better than nothing.
They also have some-
that's what my Little League coach said about what I brought to the team. You totally bring the orange slices some of the
whatever,
time.
something has happened.
No, but I
There's some
think that's a piece that you
toxic
just have to say, right now we've got no regulation. I think that we probably need to beef this up over time, but I'd rather get something on the books that we need to revisit.
Agreed. And we can,
In a way,
I mean,
given
I guess
that
as long as we
Connecticut
just.
and New Hampshire threw their hands up because they didn't know what
Right.
to do, you know.
And so I think at the very least, I'd
Mm-hmm.
want people to know that there's a possible exposure, and I'd want them to know that they need to do baseline testing.
So maybe there's something that we could ask for in the plan, like a contingency that if, if there's an overt sort of,
Okay, so
deterioration in water supply, that there needs to be something in their plan to account for that kind of contingency, like to stop and assess.
I don't even remember. Did we say that they have to provide a plan?
Yeah.
of their
Yeah.
activity?
Yeah, we
Okay.
did.
So
So we could handle it
could
in the
provide
plan part.
Guidelines later saying what we expect
Yeah,
to
like
see
here's,
in
here's the outline, like, so, if significant deterioration in an abutter's well is observed during the project, provide the contingency plan.
Yeah,
Yeah, for alternate means.
all right. Okay, I'm gonna charge
Okay.
you with remembering
So,
that
so-
language.
so
I think there should be something that allows it to
Write up
stop.
guidelines.
So
Well,
so are we doing that or
No, I'm saying like we could put something, make them have a contingency in their plan for if something, so that way we don't have to start figuring out what's the line that we're gonna make in these
Yeah, make them
regs.
do it.
Let them have to figure that out.
Then it has to be done every single time, and
What do you mean? Well, only if it's a problem, like there could be, if people, there's lots of like knocking into rock that happens that isn't causing a problem.
no, of course not. But
Right.
so because of the vast majority of the time, it's not gonna be a problem. Why can't we have something in here for the very small?
Because we don't know where to make
Probability
that
of something's
line.
gonna
Like, is it
happen.
gonna be
Yeah,
if
like
it's
Rebecca,
10
what do you
times
think?
higher than the baseline, if it's
Well, I mean, I
10
think
times
that,
higher than a drinking water?
you get pulled over by the police officer and then you determine whether there's something, and then you get let go. Doesn't mean that,
But I think for
You're-
us, like being
you-
able to say, is he gonna pull you at 5 miles an hour over? Is it 7 miles an hour? Is it 1 mile an hour?
I mean, we could say if
But
it causes an exceedance of the secondary, of any MMCL or SMCL that didn't
I would
exist in
have
the baseline
something
sampling.
in
Well, so I
it
think- but I think
that
the baseline
allows
has to
that
be-
option.
Like
so
the baseline
people
can't
don't
be
have to
15
sue.
years ago I tested my well.
No,
and
no,
it was
no.
fine. So I think if you specified, I think you'd say baseline, if the change is more than.
In
whatever,
cases where baseline sampling is done,
As a result of the
within 3
notification.
months
Yeah.
of the blasting, if during the project, exceedance of MMCL or SMCL is observed when, the baseline, when it wasn't in the baseline, that they have to, stop and.
Propose a
assess or
plan
something.
for
I don't know.
remediation.
I like these ideas. Question being, do we want to craft what that language is now, or is?
I think if we want to have the language in now, we should do it now so that we can publish it now and have the hearing.
I would
Or
just
we
have
could
something
say,
very
if we're not willing
simple.
to spend the time, we need to not put it in this cycle of the regulations.
Right,
and
I
have
mean, we
effort.
could
This
float
not-
it, we could put
this
something in
notification
and
must be received
float
by
it
the-
during the public hearing and end up crossing it out. That
Well,
would be an approach.
but again, I'd say like if we want to take 5 minutes to just try to craft the language,
Okay.
I think it's plausible within 5 minutes we could do
Okay.
this. Lisa, can I try, you are crafting right now.
I think that we need to put, the notification was provided to the owners of properties.
Got that?
No.
How about this? Notification
Where are we?
shall.
I think she's just doing it.
Oh,
We're
we
just
don't know
take-
yet.
This is like when we took the pause last week to just kind of let me do, to let you do.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it's just
Okay.
like, it's just better for us to take 5 minutes
Yep.
now than to
Yeah.
push
Yeah.
it, and I think 5
Okay.
minutes can do it.
Okay,
So we're just gonna kind of hang out.
okay.
Talking about Alaska.
We could talk about Alaska,
Fishing.
best Alaskan fishing shows, best Alaskan reality shows. The fact that Alaska has, their budget strategy this year is they just got rid of all the money. And they said, so Alaska's run a fiscal deficit for a number of years. And the new governor was elected who said, we are gonna not only not introduce an income tax, we're gonna increase the size of the check that all Alaskans get from the state. And we're gonna start all the budgets at zero, and we're gonna put money in until we run out of money, and then nothing else happens. So it's like hundreds of millions of dollars of cuts to public education and to other pieces. We're like, that's just it. We're gonna give everybody money back, and then we'll just have a $150 million cut to public education, which already has like class sizes in the 30s.
Oh, my.
So it may be that we'll lose the Alaskan reality shows, because if they cut the tax credits that make those incentivized. So I've got another question. Do you have a garbage grinder?
No, I do
After all
not.
these years?
No. No, I don't.
I thought of this as we're at a rental house in California and the garbage grinder was there. It's like, you know, before I was on Board of Health, I would have had no problem using this
So
garbage
this one
grinder.
doesn't get signed, but it's.
But now I feel deeply
Oh,
ambivalent.
yeah. Do you want me to? Okay.
I'll start on the set,
Yep,
and then we'll
sounds
mix
good.
them all up. What's today, the 6th?
Yes.
Thanks, okay.
Hold on, just, it's taking me a little bit.
We shuffle them, right? A deck of cards.
Now, this is good TV.
This is the good stuff. You know, I want to be honest, I kind of miss the beaver permits. It's been too long.
Oh, but I don't
gave
really like that,
standing
because that
permits.
often means the demise of a beaver.
The beaver
We gave them a
permit.
standing permit, so they don't need to come back anymore.
I'm not going to take her pile.
Can't find it.
I'm going to wait till her pile's completed, then I'm going to swap her.
Where do you sign this?
That one doesn't get signed.
Okay.
This is now signed, so I think we can now jump to Rebecca. I think that can go to Rebecca, right?
Well, it's a lot warmer out in the hallway.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I think when you
I don't know
close
what's
the
going
door,
on. It's like air
I think when you
conditioning.
close the door,
Yeah.
it holds the cold.
Come on, I'll put the door
But it
open.
was so cold, but when it was
Yeah.
open, it was like a draft, and when it was cooler.
Yeah, I don't know.
And maybe that there's like no way to be comfortable. That's my take
Yeah.
on this
Yeah.
building.
I'm wearing
This-
my
yeah.
monster sweater, so.
Yeah, I kept my jacket on them from
Yeah.
Alaska. This tells you this is not climatically appropriate.
That's all you wear outside, though?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yep, you're from Alaska.
Yeah, it's fine. And I'm not outside that long. You're like, okay, I'm walking from my car to this building. Otherwise, I feel like an Oompa Loompa. And so with this, you're like, at least I'm fine. You're like, I might walk a little quick on the cold days. But I've got the big jacket that I do when it's really cold, but that's not like 20 degrees. That's like 5 degrees. Or 20 degrees if I was really going to be outside, but not active. Like if I was going to have to catch a train somewhere or do something, then it would probably be big poofy. But if I'm
Yeah,
just
so
walking.
it's fine. This time of year, after you've been through cold weather,
Yeah.
right, I go outside in just a sweater
Yeah.
and fill the bird feeder,
Yeah,
do a little shoveling and
yeah.
whatever. But at the beginning of the season,
Right, or if you go someplace warm and then you come back and question all of your life choices.
Okay, this is sloppy, but I don't know.
Alright.
Just don't-
All right, we're ready.
So adding to accompanying the permit application shall be certified mail return receipts documenting that bedrock disruption notification was provided to owners of properties, blah, 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 within a quarter mile upon which the bedrock disruption is to take place. I'm thinking we add something here saying notification shall include recommendation for abutters to conduct, quote, baseline water quality sampling and analysis for select metals and nitrate. Okay, so just adding that, and then making that explicit, and then we could add an E, saying if a, quote, notified abutter identifies water quality deterioration such that analysis indicates exceedances of MMCLs or SMCLs, the project applicant shall cease disruption until the condition or the identified condition has been remediated or something.
That sounds good.
All right, so if I was somebody doing it, I'd say, so I have to clean up their water even if it hasn't been proven that I'm the source?
No, well, this is for, well, like, baseline sampling exceedances. I mean, they weren't there in the baseline, and now they are there. So I'll just say, what is analysis exceedance of MMCLs, if a notified abutter conducts baseline sampling,
Can you say is
or
evaluated?
deterioration such that analysis indicates exceedances of MMCLs when the baseline did not or something. See, I can't, this is too complicated to do on the cuff.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
I can't.
So I
I
think
think
we
so
need to
too.
say, this was a college try.
Yeah.
We cannot get it in this iteration. We should get this on the books. I like the first edition, but I think it gets tricky
Why
for
can't we
the,
say until it's evaluated?
but I think like you say, okay,
Because
it's
it's
It doesn't have to
evaluated.
be remediated, it just needs to be
Evaluated how?
evaluated.
By a court, by the board, by
Yeah,
them,
no,
by...
I think, let's just say, let's have them add the notification, in the notification, let's be explicit saying the notification shall include a recommendation
Yep, I agree with
For-
that.
I actually
for
would like,
abutters to conduct baseline water quality sampling and analysis for select metals and nitrates.
I would
Recognize.
rather, I think, say, so that we're not boxed into that, is say the notification shall include the information required by the board and a guide for, I don't know, what do we call stuff that we give them about how to do notifications now?
Just the policy guidance.
Fact sheet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I would
fact-
rather have
yeah,
that
no,
so
not
that
fact
we can
sheet.
change it over time if
All
we
right.
need to.
Yeah.
Does that
Okay,
make
fine, that's
sense,
fine,
right? Then-
to reference something, but
Yeah.
I just think we want to make
Yeah.
sure that they know that the notification should
So,
include.
the notification, prepared, like comma, prepared in accordance with Board of Health, guidelines?
Yeah, guidance.
I don't,
The notification
But at
shall.
the public hearing, somebody might say, well, what is your
Well, yeah,
guidance?
that's like, this is like my
They will
one
ask,
that again?
and they
thing.
will want to
Okay.
see it.
say that
We
again.
do have a draft somewhere of
Ellen,
something.
can you repeat
But does
what
it
you
say
said?
anything different than what I said?
I couldn't hear.
No, not necessarily, but,
Well, see, I don't know. To me, I don't see a lot of downside by saying
Okay.
that the notification shall include a recommendation for,
Oh, so what if you include that recommendation
Okay.
or other guidance from the Board of Health? Because if you added something 5 years from now, you wouldn't want to say we have to go through a public hearing because we added something else that is largely related. You'd
Okay.
want to be able to say, we want this to not be boxed in such that a change would take months to years to implement, but rather, here's
okay,
a
so we can
guidance
add
to approve.
comma or other,
Why can't you say on the other list that if a change a significant change has been observed?
because then we have to define
do you define-
significant.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like.
No, but
And
your
then-
wording, some
No, yeah, but
MCL
it's my wording was.
yeah, but that's the
No,
part
but
of
I
it.
think that you'd sort of say then,
To
okay,
define
and it was
What kind of
established.
change?
What kind of change? Okay, you say have to remediate. Like, what does that mean? Their groundwater has manganese in it. I don't think it's for me. I can do anything.
No, but you just say that an evaluation is initiated with the Board of Health.
So when you say evaluation, like,
Oh, no,
God,
I'm not
no,
doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. No.
Like, I don't think we're in
I'm
a
not gonna be
position to
doing
be the
that.
experts to
Yeah,
judge
absolutely
this is
not.
the right pieces.
No,
Like, I
we
think
can
it's
set,
like a
we can set the
hydrogeologist.
goals that we want people to understand what their water quality is before the project starts, so that if there's a clear problem, like someone in our town observed, that they have clear recourse and and I do think that we're gonna require in the plan, like, you need to have a contingency if the shit hits a fan while you're doing this disruption. You need to have a plan to deal with that. So we
Right.
don't have to tell them what that is or how, but they need
Right.
something in their plan that's a contingency, because we have private water. And if one of these
You can
abutters has a
have it
problem,
as
But the abutter has to be able to, there has to be a way for the Board of Health to say you have to cease and desist.
No, but
Because then we're not
I don't
representing
think,
the-
like,
the
I can't
residents.
prove, we can't
Yeah.
prove that, like, I think what we'd say is, we genuinely
just keep putting
believe-
it on the applicant, like the
Right.
applicant, make the applicant
And
deal
the
with
applicant
it.
could say, if we got manganese in their well, we would do this. And they'd say,
Yeah.
great, you said ahead of time that's what you
Right,
do.
right.
Manganese is in their well, now you need to
I
do
know,
it.
but right, so we know that, to ask for that. But 5 years from now, the
No,
Board of
this
Health
is-
might not know.
No, but that's why you have a plan, like, how would the board stop knowing that? Like, ledge
Yeah.
disruption is gonna happen each and every year, right? Like, we have
No, I
plenty of
mean, if
ledge
it-
here.
All the
So-
plans that will be issued will be on file. It's not like then some next board's gonna be,
Yeah.
Matt's gonna be on the board for like.
There has
Oh,
to
no,
be a
no,
way
I'm
to
enjoying the
stop
glamour.
progress until there's evaluation, because that's what
But
happens in
who,
clinical
but you said,
situations.
so far you've suggested the board. I think the board has globally said, I am not the evaluator. So if the board's not the evaluator, who do you see as the evaluator? Because I don't see it as the Board of Health.
You would use a hydrogeologist, they would need to hire someone, prove indeed it was caused from the.
An
other
LSP,
source.
actually, just not
Right,
me.
but that, to me, that proving whether or not it's related is not our problem, but
That's right.
stopping the source
But
of
that-
the
Being
problem.
Yeah, but you're just
Identify
saying,
that we have
you're just
stopped
saying
something
that,
for a
like, that
reason.
we're
Yeah,
saying that
right.
they caused it.
Yeah, and we can't do
And-
that
and-
without proof.
And I think what
It's
we
hard,
said, I
because it's
think,
yeah.
underground.
and that could be their
Where am I
plan.
signing this?
Right.
Somewhere where you can find a line, they
If
not
there's
left
an
me
issue,
no
we'll do
room to
that.
put the stamp.
They may propose that in their plan. They may
many
say, if this
stamps.
happens to introduce water system, why?
I don't know. I
Look, it's
think
better
that-
than what we
Okay,
have
so-
now, which is nothing, so it's.
True, no,
Yeah,
okay.
you know, we gotta,
Agree.
We are trying to arm folks, neighbors,
What's the we're
with
trying?
the information they will need
Just an extra plan.
to
I have.
pursue.
just-
I would
should
say,
ask-
I would say equip, not
on the
arm.
last one, right?
Like, I think we want to give
Yes.
people, like, I don't
Why
think
don't
we
we
need to
find
say.
out what DEP does?
Yeah, you're right.
They don't do
don't do anything.
anything. They just say you can't use perchlorate, literally, that's all DEP does. And then if, so for example, like in the town of Westford, that, their LSP now, they had done blasting because they had all these like big hills, okay, of granite, and so all this blasting had gotten done for years and years and years, and it got in their water supply, and it impacted all these wells, so the town had a deal with like putting in a treatment system and then converting people to public water supply, and it wasn't the developer, it's the town had to
No, I
end up
understand, but
paying.
when, was it identified in the middle when he was doing the work or
No.
afterward?
After.
Way
Right, so it's
after.
after. What I'm saying is if there's something happening, there's active activity, there needs to be a way to.
We
have
get
to
your point.
stop-
Yeah, we do.
We're
Yeah.
saying on a
We don't- we don't-
environmental regulatory level,
So-
really hard to.
But so do you, so I guess the question is, do
Do
you
that.
want to delay this for
So-
months to try to get at that? My
No,
piece is,
but-
I don't want to
but-
delay it for months, and I think that, I don't think we can get there tonight. So I think it's better for us
Yeah, it's
to use this
not-
time to get a start than to wait longer on the start.
And we can
because
always-
it's more
You
I
know
reliable.
how
agree.
many years people fight over Superfund sites and proof that there's
Yeah.
an issue?
Yeah.
There's Superfund sites.
And so for me, I wouldn't say that I disagree that there should be a mechanism for how to address a deviation.
Is this together?
I think,
Yeah, I put the
I guess the
plan I
question
reviewed
is,
that
right now,
didn't pass.
do we have the
Okay.
language for
Just
you
keep
about
that.
the remediation plan? So
I don't
what's,
have,
what's the
I
language?
think the probability is extremely low that it's gonna happen.
But do we want
The
in
question is if you know that there's something actively happening,
Right,
Can
can
you
you
stop
not
it?
get it worse?
Totally hear
Yep,
that. I
yep.
think that we're stuck in getting that in a reg, because I think it will delay getting a reg. The question I have is, Lisa, you talked about having a remediation plan as part of the permit. Do we need to add
A contingency plan, not a remediation plan, just
okay.
like a,
Right.
sort of like, if something really bad
Say-
happens.
Does that need to be in the reg, or is that in the?
Well,
in the
We'll have to come up with some kind of guidance for that.
Had, so something,
What the heck?
He's like, the headphones weren't on.
Took them off after that.
Okay.
you had an amendment, if you could share that with Ellen, right?
What, the notification shall
Yes.
include?
Yeah.
Uh-oh,
Anyway,
I better write it.
Yeah, you got it right.
So,
She's coming
now
over.
where is
She's
that
coming in hot.
going to be? Where will they?
Place.
but I agree that.
Okay,
it's
right there.
much better
Okay,
than it
yep,
was.
okay.
Oh
Want
my
me to
God.
I
write
agree
it
that
so I
this
can
is
read it?
fantastic amount of work, and
Right.
yeah, I just.
And I don't think any of us would say the work is done. I think what we're
Yeah.
saying is really, we need to
Uh-oh.
start. This is how far I think we can get in version 1.
Do you want me to
And then I
write it?
think We need to get.
Recommendation.
Yeah.
Right.
4.
But I think we just want to get something on the books to start
conduct.
Well, I mean,
providing some
there's gotta be
protection.
something, there's gotta be some.
Baseline.
I don't think that it would be a
Water
problem to have
quality.
something extreme in there, even though the probability of it reaching that level,
And
but having it
analysis.
there might be.
But I think if you say, that, hey, this is the first time we're talking to
Or
you,
select
you haven't
metals
thought about this
and
nearly as much.
nitrate.
Like, we've cumulatively talked about this for probably 8 or 10 hours over the course of multiple meetings.
And
And we're
then
gonna have an
they were
opportunity
saying,
to
like-
present it at the public hearing, where people are gonna hear about it for 5 minutes. And if they see something that they perceive as
How
draconian,
about just-
they're gonna react to that and not bring the
We'll get that for
thoughtfulness
now.
Okay.
that we've had with a lot
Okay.
more kind of expert knowledge on the board, not my knowledge, but your guys' knowledge. And the research that David did and all those pieces, they're gonna react in 5 minutes to say, you said if this happens, the project shuts down. And I don't know what that means, and you can't tell me what that means, and I think that poisons people on the whole regulation and the work we're trying to do, which I think that would get overwhelming support. Like, what we've proposed so far, it's very difficult for me to imagine that anybody would say, the act of notifying people that you're doing stuff that could affect their water supply is unreasonable. And so I take that win.
Right.
And I think we need to keep working, and if that's a piece where we say, gosh, this really hasn't done enough, or we as a board feel like this was the first piece of it, we need to do the second piece, but that's gonna take us another 6 months to figure out in conjunction with everything else we have to do. Let's get this on the books and do that piece in 6 months. So
and
we
if there's
start
somebody
somewhere.
who comes who is interested in seeing more, maybe they can help do some research and see.
How about this? What about if we put something general, like we have
I do
in
like
other
things
things
that are general.
that, say that, you know how like we said that, you can't put in additional wells unless you can show it doesn't adversely impact, you know, butters wells. Was that for the additional well? That was,
That was
I think that was the number of wells section.
yeah. So what happens if we just put in a sentence at the beginning of the disruption piece that say, you know, any such disruption shall be performed in such a manner that it does not cause adverse impacts? At least just articulating that as a general precept.
Demonstrable adverse impacts.
But it gets tricky, because I think, again, it's a question of our ability.
I'm not saying getting into the nitty gritty. I'm just saying as a performance standard, like, by the way, when you're doing this, you need to,
how will we evaluate that?
I don't know.
So
No, I don't think there's anything
On
wrong
the-
with making a general statement
Did you
that's
give any kind of
ideal.
contingency plan? Was that part of the?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that the permit shall, the permit application?
Yeah.
Well, shall include, no, because we didn't say anything what the permit needs to include. We didn't, we were totally silent, so I didn't want to start it saying what it might need to
Well, so
include.
again.
That's the only thing I can think of, shall include contingency plan and plans for managing the debris, but.
No, but that's like getting into the, like, so
Yeah.
we're gonna have to make a separate little guidance thing about,
Okay, so
yeah.
we gotta,
There may be something the
and
EPA
take what you had
has so
done
much.
before on that too. and,
Oh, yeah, I had
Stan,
some of that
David,
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say EPA may have something, general verbiage that might talk about ledge disruption in respect to wells.
No, we've done,
No, you
that's
don't wanna go
exactly
that
the
far.
research we've been doing. EPA? No.
Oh, they don't have anything. huh? That's too
Not
bad.
that- not
That's
that
why you're having
New
problems with
Hampshire
the
and
disclaimer.
Connecticut could find, which is.
And they're like
stopped.
ahead of the pack,
So
so.
maybe one of those two states, they may have a disclaimer you're trying to put at the beginning of that.
Yeah, no, they got
They
nowhere
don't.
with, they didn't write anything.
Oh,
They
oh.
recognized the problem, but
It's
they
interesting.
didn't have anything.
You're breaking new ground here.
Yeah, this is, I know, I really thought we could piggyback on
But it's,
someone bigger.
but it's relevant in a lot of places, so.
Okay, so,
Maybe that's why you have to stay generic at the time, and as further information comes out, you can increase to that regulation.
okay, so are we on the last one then? Tobacco? And
I liked
so,
it.
Right now, it's the italics. Those things come out. I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Menthol mint or wintergreen
They're-
used to be tobacco flavor and menthol mint and wintergreen were okay. Now it's just going to say tobacco and then it's going to refer to flavors later on.
Like it.
Is that okay? with you? So, let's see, do we want to have a motion to amend the draft as discussed this evening, noting that I will be sending you, just for my section, I don't know if you need that, but that'll be the amendments discussed. I'll just email that. It's not going to be long. And removing 2.4 from the proposed,
The semi,
semi-public water supply is out, and that's it. So do we have a motion to approve?
So why are we taking that out?
because
Again.
we can't make it work right now.
Yeah.
We couldn't reach agreement. We need a clear criterion.
So we're not taking
Threshold.
out.
It'll
we're
just stay
we
the way
just
it
can't
is.
do it yet.
changing it. There's an existing definition that we're not changing.
Yeah,
Right, no, I understand that, because I know.
yeah, it's just not ready for prime time.
Maybe some of the work will get done for us.
Maybe.
Right. Because a lot of this stuff is going on at the state level anyway. Not having to do with wells, but having to do with 40B developments and all the high-density projects, so.
So moved. Was that what you asked like a
Yeah.
while ago?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks for all
Okay.
the work.
So that concludes everything except for we just have two minor administrative things. So Rick, if you'd like to close the televised portion, we'll just take care of the warrants and payroll and...
Can I just ask one question? So we talked about the water piece. Does that include the chess
Oh.
business number 3?
No, we did not. Okay.
I can't.
I know,
Great.
I'm a little fried myself.
I
It's been
know.
a long day. All right, how about in 2 minutes, can you define more of what you would like us to talk about next time? And we'll try to think about it between now and then. Number 3 under Chair's business.
Oh,
Like frame the issue a little bit and then we'll take it up when we're all a little bit
Fresher.
peppier than we are right now.
oh, is this considered to be my issue?
Yeah, you would ask
Yes,
for it.
on the board.
There
on
are a
the
couple
agenda.
issues. One is the sort of, what is our role for the representing the abutters who don't have statutory protection, so therefore it becomes a legal, they have to sue in order to look out for their own interests. What does the Board of Health have to do? And I don't know the answer to that. I think we maybe need to reach out to MAHB, Cheryl Sabara, who's the attorney for the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards. What are they recommending? to other towns like us, where there either is 100% or a lot of well.
But in that case,
Water.
like, this is so the town would be the agent of, like, I think if she's offering guidance to the towns, in this case, if you're protecting abutters, you're protecting them from the town, right?
I don't know.
I guess I view all
It's
of
not-
the Board of Health regulations
To me-
basically as protecting
Yeah,
public
I mean,
health
hopefully,
in general.
everything we do is in the town's best interest, so it's not like we're against the town. It's for the town. But when a developer is putting in a project that potentially contaminates the drinking water of their well, right? Because they're in a butter.
But so what are we talking about 41 North Main, or are we talking about, because we're the developer
Or
in that case?
disruptors, or,
It's not just
No, we're
that
not.
project, it's like,
But I mean, like, if we're owning the wastewater treatment plant,
but that's down the road, but if you're
and if we're
talking.
contaminating the wells, like, that's what we'd be
I
contaminating.
think this
But
is
that's
why
what-
we make the regs.
This
Right.
is what Title V is
I
designed
understand,
to
but Title-
prevent that from happening, and
Right.
as well distances are designed to prevent that from happening. Whether that works all the time is another question, but that's what all the regulations are there for. So I guess, how do we go further? And I think one thing that we lack, right, the Water Management Act at the state level, which is dissolving, but that would look at really big public water supply systems and try to map and analyze them and periodically review the watersheds that they're situated in every X number of years, and then determine what the yield, sustainable yield is in that watershed and what else is going on. That's a massive effort. I think the state is way behind at the moment in that. So could we do that more at a town level? And that's, should we be mapping people's wells that have gone dry and what they had to put in, and then
apparently
relate the
there's.
data? And we've hired consultants in the past to try to do that, and it's just really difficult, so it didn't,
I don't know
wasn't
what
able to yield
we,
such specifics.
how, I don't know how you assess the amount of water or whatever, but apparently there's a town in Massachusetts that's put a moratorium on wells. So there are no more wells because they have 100% well water, and they've determined.
I just cannot
not-
imagine the lawsuit
No.
defense there in terms
I'm
of.
not,
Yeah,
I'm
that
not,
means
I
that
just
means there's
heard
no more
that and I thought,
development.
wow, really? I'm not saying this is what
But
I
that,
want.
I guarantee you,
I'm saying-
that's a town where they have public water supply. There's no way that you could tell people.
I think that's probably a place where you say, hey, you say, no, don't worry, I'm watering my grass in the middle of the drought, but it's well watered, don't sweat it.
Right.
I think
That's why I'm saying, like, I think that,
it's not for residential
yeah,
wells.
yeah.
And apparently in that town, and I've got to find out what the town is, they are mandating that existing properties be converted into affordable housing rather than new development to reach those goals. I just thought that was really interesting. It's not my personal interest.
It
It's
could be
just something
Ipswich.
that-
Ipswich is having trouble with
Might be.
one of the rivers drying
It's
out
some
every
of
year.
the-
And they are talking about eliminating all wells, irrigation wells, so that they don't
Well,
draw
right.
on the
That-
total
that-
water.
We just
Yeah.
wrote a reg for that.
But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I was wondering if you guys knew anything about it.
Yeah.
I've heard that irrigation wells
Yeah.
are what they're
Yeah.
after,
Yeah.
especially when there's a
About
mismanagement of the watersheds. And if you're drawing, and the river's drying out every year, this is definitely an issue, and that's what I've heard, is
Yeah.
they're
Right,
looking
that's
at
the
irrigation wells.
poster child for
Yeah.
cross-boundary transfer, or whatever they call
Yes,
it, water.
multi-jurisdictional
Supplies,
type.
Draw
And
water from one place, discharge
Exactly.
wastewater somewhere else, like a
especially when
irrigatory system.
public water supplies, you can put water bans on them, but then you
Right.
still got your wells drawing from the same source you're trying to prevent being
Right.
overused during droughts. So it is up and coming that they're looking at that's kind of what you're looking at with 2 wells on a project.
Right, so I think we took that
Start.
under advisement.
It was mostly, I was just wondering about how you handle the situations where you have this, in this case, it's the town, but sure, let's take another example where it's not the town, it's some developer, like the Fields of Sherborn, and the abutters who organized, and then they were worried about their drinking water, and he was worried about his business, and they all have good, reasonable arguments. And, you know, where's the board's responsibility? Now, if their private water systems were involved with everything, but if it's a public water supply because they put in a sewage treatment plant or something, then are we supposed to be fighting on behalf of the residents?
I feel
Or
like
are
we keep asking the question,
Yeah.
and so like, my answer is, no, I don't think so, I think it's the state.
Yeah.
Your answer is different.
Yeah.
We either need to say, we want to go to town council to, like, I don't think that's a Carol Sabara question.
No.
I think it's a question of, if we want to resolve that, I think that's a question to put to select board and town council.
Town council, and,
I think
right.
if we want to do that, great. If we don't want to do that, great. But I don't think it's, like, I think we just need to either say, we're going to do that, or we're going to stop, kind of because I think it's come up on a bunch of projects, and I totally get that we have different interpretations or framings of what would make sense, but I just think.
It's not even my opinion, it's what I was told, so I'm just, you know,
But I'd
going
say,
by
like,
what
that
I've
doesn't
learned
get
at
us
the
anywhere.
meetings.
Like, I think if we want to answer that question, I think it's probably not us asking Carol Sabara who will tell us, because I think ultimately, if we're wrong about those sets of assertions, it's a town that would be paying for the council that would be dealing with it. So
I don't think we pay Cheryl Sabara.
No, but
No,
my
no,
piece
no,
is, if
the
she says, yeah, you should
repercussions.
totally
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
and then we do it, and then the town gets sued, the town's going to be the one paying to adjudicate the advice that she gave, and so I think we would then want to say,
Okay, well,
give
what
it.
if the townspeople sue?
No, but I would say,
us?
like, I think we should say, if we have a
We're not
question for.
representing their interests.
I think
No,
the
no,
thing is,
yeah,
I have this question.
I think
I don't
there's
think
too
Carol
many
Sabara is
mixed-
the piece. I think it's ask town council that question,
Yeah.
if we want to ask that question, not ask.
Yeah, sure.
And also,
Cheryl, that,
like,
sure,
you're
you're right.
basically asking, how can we advocate in cases where we actually don't have authority? And the
Right.
answer is,
We can't.
it's really hard.
Or I think,
And
what I
we
would say is,
can
I
as
think
a
your question
board.
is slightly different. I think your question is, do we have a responsibility in cases where state regulations apply to apply additional oversight? Like, what is
No.
our jurisdiction breakdown?
Okay, so I'll give an
That sounds-
example of what I think you
feel
mean.
like you're very hostile towards me and I have no clue
No, I'm not
why.
trying to be hostile,
No,
but we've
no.
had the
Yeah,
same
I
talk
mean,
like 10 times.
I know.
And so I think that we sort of make this assertion that, no, we have to do this. And I think we either need to figure out how do we want to answer that question, and it can't be, this person told me that. It needs to be legal advice from somebody we've retained to say, here's the advice and the approach we'll take.
I have an example of how we would go about that. You were talking about somebody's putting in a large well, and is that going to affect the neighbors? So if we can come up with something for semi-public water supply at some point, we say, whenever we figure out how we define that big well and what the thresholds are, that if they're going to do it, when they first drill it, they have to do pump testing and they have to monitor neighbors.
Which
Just
is
like
what-
we did
for
Right.
41,
59
I mean, 59
North
North Main, yeah.
So,
Right.
but we codify it, so it's there and
It's
ready
a
to go all the
regulation,
time.
right.
So, I mean, for that, because it was a negotiation, because it was 40B, there was a back and forth. But barring that, we need to have something written down that says, this action will trigger this kind of double checking on it to see if it's okay. So,
But if it meant the public water supply, is there a role for double checking by the town of Sherborn or by Board of Health?
I don't know. I think it depends on what other things are going on in terms of, does it mean variances to zoning? Does it mean some other kind of accommodation by the town? Again, is it a negotiable point
So do we want
to
to kind of,
round out projects versus they can just
Well,
go
I
get
think-
approvals
well, so
from
I-
the
so I
state
think-
and we can try to educate the state about things we're concerned
I-
about, but I don't know.
Why
aside
don't
from
you
that.
guys, I mean,
But, yeah.
again, in the
We've
next
hit
meeting, I
more
think,
than 2 minutes,
why
so-
don't Rebecca and you guys think about the particular kind of scenarios that you think we could maybe add value and have a sort of role in that, but think of them pretty specifically. That would be my
I think go to town
advice,
council
like,
too.
you know, if we just have this nebulous thing, like, of course we want to make sure that people's wells are, you know, protected, and, you know, I mean, I think every single one of us has that as an ideal, but like, think about the specific times and situations that you feel like it's either unclear or there might be an opportunity that we could be better advocates or proactively, typically, that we could insert ourselves into sort of helping be a buffer against those problems. Like,
Well, I mean, I think writing regulations is the first step. I think that it's possible that you don't really understand what I'm asking.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
And I mean, that's
Yeah.
obviously, that's clear to me.
Yeah.
I get the sense that some people are upset because they feel like we're not representing their interests.
But I think sometimes they're
And-
upset, like, people are
Sure,
upset now. but
yeah.
None of those people were upset when like, if you look at the projects, the Venn diagram of people who were at our meetings for Coolidge Street and the people who were at our meetings for 41 North Main are not the same people, although many of the same issues apply. People are most upset when it affects them, and
Right.
a very small percentage, people like us, like the other board members in town, who have a more global view, who say, like, I'm going to spend a bunch of my time trying to attend these meetings and contributing to the discussion, independent of the fact that this project doesn't affect my home today. I think that we have to figure out that people being mad at that we're not doing something represents their interests, and it doesn't mean that that's because we're wrong and we should be doing something. I think we have to figure out where is our scope, and if we're outside of our scope, if we get brushed back from the plate because we're overstepping our boundaries, we haven't done them any favors either, because they perceive that we said, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this, and if the developer sues, as Fields did, and we lose, we have done them no good by giving them a perception that this problem has been solved. Nobody went into Fields saying, like, you guys work like dogs to try to do the right thing for the abutters, for the town, and for everybody else. And ultimately, we still got brushed back where they said your regulations don't support this, and you're overstepping what you can do with what you have here. And it wasn't that you guys, I don't know that I would characterize it the same way that the judge did, but that was the judge's decision. So I think for us, anytime we're saying we're going to insert ourselves into this body of regulations, that this is overseen by the state, we have to be able to say this is the basis. Because if I was a developer, I would sue us to say, I've got Mass DEP telling me what I need to do and regulating me.
You have no authority.
You have no authority. And I think a judge would say, I agree. I may be wrong in that. And I think that's a question for town council to answer is, does the presence of statutory authority by the state for an area of regulation like wastewater treatment plants and public water
Inhibit us
supplies,
from.
is there a separate independent responsibility and oversight capacity for Board of Health that has a responsibility to the members of the town in excess of those requirements? Because I think what any developer would say is, why would I ever go to a public water supply if I still had to meet Sherborn's own regs and the state regs?
I don't know.
Okay, well, so, yes.
So I
But
think
I already know all this, so why are you telling it to me?
So I don't understand what the question we're trying to answer is if we're saying, I know this, but we keep talking about it every time we talk about a big project like 41 North Main. Yes to the regulator, but we have a separate responsibility. Like, that's what we're talking about with this project, is what do we need to do in excess of the state, why the state doesn't do enough and we should be doing something else. If that's not a question and we all agree the state should be doing it, I don't think we have a question at all.
The state is regulating that project,
So what,
but the state has nothing to do and they have no interest in the next door neighbor.
so,
I don't know.
Yes,
but I
it
think
is.
the
That's
state,
what
the
the-
state.
I don't think that's
That's
true
what-
either. I think that's a simple.
Well, I mean, what I mean is they have they're not, it's not their jurisdiction. Their jurisdiction is
I
the
don't
project.
think that's a fair characterization. I think that they're saying, I'm treating wastewater
You
for the
said you
people
were going to
that.
talk about this the next meeting.
I don't know why we're talking about it now. I mean, I don't even want, like, I feel like I'm learning a lot through being on the Board of Health. This is not my expertise.
Yeah,
And, but all the time, I feel like you have no clue what I just said and you start attacking me and you're not even close to what
I'm sorry you
I'm
feel
saying.
attacked.
I
don't-
know.
But I don't
It's
think.
too bad
no,
because
but I-
I'm a lot more aware of the things you're saying
but
than
I
you
don't
realize.
think, but I think you're mischaracterizing, like, you're assigning our behaviors of you're attacking me. You experience feeling attacked. I think what we're trying to say is, this is what I'm hearing from you and it doesn't make sense to me. And that's what I'm trying to communicate when I raise it. It's not, Rebecca, I think you're doing a terrible job or not doing good work.
No, I
think
didn't
it's
think
to
that.
say, I don't agree with this, and I don't agree with the characterization. I would say I do feel frustrated because it feels like we talk about it on a lot of projects, and we need to find some way to resolve it and put it to rest, because I think otherwise that conversation and clarification will keep coming up. And I
Okay,
think
well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I actually think one of your strengths, which I think is really great, is I think you're really good at acknowledging both sides of arguments, which is really nice and reassuring for the people who are asking questions or who have concerns.
Yeah.
And I think that's really great. And I can't think of an example because I don't even know of an example where I'm not happy with something.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I can't think of a good example. And I'm sorry that you
But I think
feel
it gets
that way.
confusing, like when 41 North Main abutters come in and say, don't you have a responsibility to do this? Or when we had the Maple Street one, there's pieces that you'd say, I wish I could do it. If I were king of the world and I could just decide things, I would do it. But I think it creates confusion if we say, we do have that responsibility. And if we're saying on one hand, that's that's a piece that you genuinely deeply believe, like how do we resolve that so we give a consistent
I
message?
think there's a difference
Well,
between
there's-
responsibility and advocacy, and that,
Right.
and right. So like
Yeah.
responsibility implies that we have a legal obligation that we're actually being negligent in whatever our mission statement and goals of this board is supposed to be doing, that we're actually not doing it. And I don't think that's the case. I think that what I think you're struggling with, and I struggle with this sometimes too, is I of course want everyone to have good water quality. I want to advocate for them to have continued capacity, safety, and not be harmed by either development or ledge disruption or a wastewater treatment plant. I think all of us are on that same page, but there's a difference between what do we have the authority and legal obligation to do versus what do we as like good citizens and stewards of the environment and health want to do. So I feel like, yeah, that is a tension and a struggle, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, what you're saying, but I sense like, from you too, sometimes this conflict between like, I wish I could do more. I think I do too.
Yeah.
But that's not this kind of conversation. Like, we're trying to be with our regs, like we have to be specific and clear and have the authority to do the things and say the things in those regs that we think ultimately are going to protect the public health. So so what are you suggesting above and beyond that, I guess? Are you suggesting something different or?
No.
Okay.
Okay, and so part of what I try
I
and
just think
translate
that
is
when I go to the MHB, at the MHB meeting, they talk about certain things. And that's what they do. And so I don't know why their advice is not worthwhile when I relay it back to you, why you're not interested.
What I would say is it's not being not interested, but I'd say something coming up at MAHB, for me, if it's something about what's the scope of our oversight, I would feel uncomfortable with an advocacy. Like, even though MAHB, I think, thoughtful, expert, that's great, but I would still say if we're saying that's the way we're going to define our scope, we need to base it on guidance from council in a legal framework as opposed to this was the presentation of what they asserted. So it's not that I would dismiss it, but I would say it being communicated by MAHB saying this is what your scope is, that may be true. I would still recommend we validate that with town council because we will need to defend that. And if we just say, no, MAHB told us this in a presentation, I worry about our ability to get the funding we need to defend something that we haven't vetted through the channels we have access to ahead of time.
Anyway, I have no idea what you guys think. I don't even know what we're talking about.
Awesome.
I don't either.
I think it's because it's 11:15 and I think we should stop.
I think I'm just fried.
I think we all have the same objective. What I try and see is what is it you're saying is
Just
a
sign.
concern, but how
Sign a
can we
date,
get there
please.
by defining it? Because we can't just say,
Which one?
we don't want anything bad
Each
to
one.
happen. We need
It's a
to
bunch.
I don't
define
understand
what would be
what-
bad and how would we know
What is it that you
something
think
bad
I'm
has happened.
saying? When did I say something that was?
I think we're talking, in the regs, we're talking specific. So if you're
I
in
know.
agreement with that, then that's
I've
great.
had 2 deaths in the family. I haven't even read the regs, okay, so I have no clue.
These,
So I'm not giving
Okay.
any
I didn't do
input.
this.
I can be very detailed.
These are my benefits.
I think that you guys have done a great job.
Finance said that's nobody's business.
Okay,
said,
so-
I mean,
don't
I
have to
just like,
sign other
I have
ones.
no clue.
Perfect, so I can vote.
She's crossing them off.
Sorry.
Sign date.
It's
I
just
didn't
so weird.
I think we're good.
You all set?
We're all set.
Okay, thank you.